Be without fear in the face of your enemies. Be brave and upright, that God may love thee. Speak the truth always, even if it leads to your death. Safeguard the Neon Crew podcast and do no wrong. That is your oath. And that is to remember it by.
Nice.
Liam Neeson's voice is one of the most iconic voices in Hollywood, right?
Think so.
Like, you could close your eyes and hear his voice and you'd recognize that it's him.
I've done a more, I think a better test is if you were at a gas station and a stranger rolled down their window to ask for directions, would you recognize it being Liam? Like, would you recognize that voice?
Right. Like, he's got his hood up.
Yeah.
Maybe like sunglasses. Got like a hat underneath the hood that's like kind of tilted down.
It could be whatever. I mean, it's just like you don't catch a great glimpse. It's not like you're staring at him and recognize it. It's just like if your back was to him and you just heard like a voice come out and say, "Hey, can you tell me where?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you were searching for a CD underneath the car seat.
Yeah, like someone startled you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Morgan Freeman doing like his, like if he came up, I'd be like, "Oh shit."
Right.
I think I would do the same with Liam Neeson.
Al Pacino coming up and being like,
"Oh,
hey, you got directions to Ontario."
Yeah, I'd be curious. Some of the guys though too, I'm always like, is that like their
right? Is that their performance, or like how do they sound in real life? Like Gilbert Gottfried?
No, you'd know him. Oh yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Right, with this voice.
Right, he just talks like me.
Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, Gilbert Gottfried recently passed away, R.I.P.
Yes.
Comedian, iconic for his voice, very shrill. He voiced the Affleck duck.
Yes.
Sort of like, he talks kind of like this. Like, just very like
intense.
More
shrill. Yeah.
A little bit more shrill. I can't get myself to be that shrill, unfortunately. I wish I could. But there's a clip of him leaving a message for Howard Stern. That's his actual voice.
Really?
And he's very like mild-mannered, kind of like, hey, Howard, this is Gilbert. I just want to leave you a message saying thank you for having me on the show. You can contact me at this, blah, blah, blah. And then like you hear his performance voice, and it's like, holy shit, this is like night and day. And once you hear his real voice, you realize just how much he's putting behind the performance all the time.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
He's just constantly doing the bit, and it makes me respect him even more.
Well, that's what he gets paid for.
Well, what he got paid for.
Right. Are still good.
R.I.P.
Residuals coming in. Go to the estate, though.
Right. It could be like Michael Jackson, how he broke a bunch of sales records for his music after he passed away. Could be like that. Something along those lines. Anyway, hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 85 of the Neon Crew podcast. My name is Kyle.
I'm Mac.
We're here to talk Ridley Scott. Once again, part 2 of the Scott. Because
Part 1
was Napoleon and the first Gladiator.
Oh, 4 Ridley Scott films.
Yep. In 2 episodes.
Nice.
That's double Scott.
Yeah.
Twice the fun. It's like Michigan's Adventure, 2 parts for the price of 1. And we saw Gladiator II.
We did.
New film coming out, directed by Ridley Scott. I recommended Kingdom of Heaven to pair this with.
Okay.
So if you want to take Gladiator II,
yes,
I will be happy to listen to you.
Okay.
Very rhymey this episode.
Blimey. That works.
Bloody hell, mate.
That doesn't rhyme.
No.
All right.
It's just fun to say.
All right. Okay. We have Gladiator 2. Dos, Roman numeral I's. Written by David Scarpa, directed by Ridley Scott, starring Paul Mescal.
That's right.
Lucius?
Yep.
Okay.
Lucius Verus Aurelius.
Yes. Not to be confused with Pedro Pascal as General Acacius? Acacius. Vocacious.
I do love that they're the top 2 billed actors, and they have very kind of similar looking names.
Yeah, that's what it always trips me up.
It tickles me so much. It might be my favorite part of the film. Continue.
Okay. Good. That's good foreshadowing. Denzel Washington as Macrinus. Macrinus. Joseph Quinn as Emperor Geisha.
Gaeta.
Gaeta. Fred Heschinger as Emperor
Karsala or Karasala, something like that.
Caracalla. Caracula.
You know, Ridley Scott isn't worried about the historical accuracy
Right.
of these movies, so I'm not worried about the pronunciation of his
I was
characters.
about to say, I don't know if I need to try to get these right. We'll
don't
probably
need to.
just address them as the actors' names, and then
100%.
making a second round appearance, Connie Nielsen,
Who looks very good in this movie.
yes, as Lucilia.
She has aged very well.
Yeah, or they did some tremendous CGI. No one knows. So, Gladiator, well, we're just going to get into it. Spoiler. Well, we do that afterwards. The movie opens up with, how does it open up? It's Pedro Pascal with his wife in the field.
The Paul Mescal.
Paul Mescal.
This is going to be really fun.
This will be fun. Dude, I get them mixed up so much. I thought it was his son, like in real life.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And then I was like, oh, it's a Mescal, not Pascal.
Yeah.
So I've already imprinted that into my head, unfortunately. So I will probably mess this up quite a bit.
Don't worry. We'll train it out of you. You'll be like the starter gladiator. We'll practice and we'll...
Acronus.
Yeah.
Acronus. Anyways, Pedro Pascal with his wife in a field. He is...
Paul Mescal.
Did I do it again?
Yes, you did. You did.
Okay.
We can call him Lucius, and then we can call Pedro Pascal Pedro Pascal.
Okay. Lucius. I think right. He's doing the seed thing. He's playing with some seeds.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how it did open up like that. I don't know if there was any sort of like.
He's he's farming around with his wife that he's got.
Yes, and she's tending to some clothes, and there's a little bit of a, intimate scene. Not. Boy, this is a great introduction to this film, but like immediately opened up and I was like, all right, gratuitous sex scene. Here we go. 2 minutes into this thing. But then the horn goes off and they're apparently being raided by the Roman Empire.
Yep.
And, so they go to they take arms with the villagers, and apparently Lucius is some maybe general lieutenant, something.
Yeah, he's in a military position.
Yeah, and so we'll get into it. Okay. Yeah, off the bat, just things annoyed me. And so Pedro Pascal comes in and he's leading the Roman Empire, and they got these ships and they go to take over, and they're fighting and they're going to battle, and unfortunately Lucius's wife gets killed, and he gets flung off the side of this fort, and there's a little bit of a burning of the bodies, and they capture him and they take him, and they're going to Rome, on the outskirts of the city, where all the slaves, they have to find these gladiators. So all the slaves that come in, they deem who's the best, and Denzel pops up and Macrinus, and he sees Lucius fighting these CGI baboon dog things, and sees him win and says, I will have him and he will be my gladiator. And we just take off from there on this ever ascending story that felt like it was like at the top of Everest and someone just gave you a little push and then you just completely fall off. So spoilers for Gladiator 2.
Yeah. So this was a big movie coming out. Obviously, we had talked about the first one, so it felt imperative that we would talk about this being the sort of legacy sequel to a very well-regarded movie. I think you and I can both agree that Gladiator is a very good film.
I like it.
I like it a lot, too. I think it's my second favorite Ridley Scott.
Behind Gladiator 2.
Behind Kingdom of Heaven.
Shots fired.
No, behind Alien, the first Alien film.
Yeah, God.
And
we watched that not too long ago, man. That thing holds up.
It fucking honks, doesn't it? It's really good.
As the kids say.
I was listening to a podcast about Prometheus.
There's a yeesh. Yeesh. To my yeesh.
I'm just going to let that hang in the air
to my
for
zeesh.
a second. I'm just going to leave that right there. out in the open, in the field, much like Paul Mescal. So this movie coming out, it felt imperative to talk about it, and really had a hard indication of the quality of this film going into it. Because obviously, Ridley Scott, as of late, it feels like a very different director than Ridley Scott of previous.
I'm curious if he has much say, or if they just have his name attached to these things.
I think it's very much his movie. It's just, I think he as a director has just changed over time, for better or worse, when it comes to how he constructs narrative and what he's interested in as a filmmaker. And really, I do like this film overall. Major issues with this movie.
Oh, God, yes.
The first and foremost being, and this is something that I think I kind of nailed down in discussing with some of my coworkers about this film, is that it feels like, and this harkens back to my sentiment of him almost being a different director than the same guy who made, Gladiator and Alien and Blade Runner and all these classic movies that he's known for. It feels like he's made a trade-off. You watch older Ridley Scott films and you see how visually dynamic the storytelling is in those movies. Whether or not the story itself is like the strongest piece of what's going on in the film, you can at least guarantee that there's going to be something at least visually pleasing going on. Like Alien's got its very specific aesthetic.
Yeah.
Gladiator, Blade Runner.
I think they're like more simple stories.
Yes.
Without a lot of plot. They're just very simple, and he usually lets his creativeness take over with what we're seeing visually. So there's a lot. It's a good buffet to have.
Someone brings him a concept and he sort of fills in the blanks.
Yes.
With the way that he shoots his films.
Yes.
And while I don't know if he's someone who has a very specific kind of visual style, at least back then, it's something where you're going to watch one of his movies and you're going to take something out of it visually. Like there's something exciting going on screen, and he's filming it in the most interesting way that he feels the need. And, back then you'd watch a film like Gladiator, and maybe he didn't have like the budget to do everything that he wanted to, but he worked with what he had, and he made it feel very much within that world of like the Roman Empire, and like everything's like color graded a specific way. Everything feels very purposeful, at least from a visual standpoint.
Yes.
And with this movie, it feels like the trade-off is, now I've got a shit ton of money, I can put that into a shit ton of special effects and production design and like locations and all this different stuff.
Yep.
Casting choices.
Yep.
But for me, where that trade-off is, I've got all this stuff, but then the sacrifice is that visual storytelling. It feels like a lot of the time he just took the camera, pointed it at what was happening, and then just said, let's roll.
Yep.
And
agreed.
There was a recent comment made by his cinematographer, John Matheson, that said Ridley Scott has become lazy when it comes to shooting his movies.
Oh, God, yeah.
Which, I mean, he's an 86-year-old man, not totally ununderstandable that he would
that's what
slow
I'm
down.
Saying. Like, is his name... I'm not saying it's not his direction, but I guess what I was saying was, it feels like there was an old coach for Penn State, Joe Paterno, who got wrapped up in a whole bunch of bad stuff. But,
portrayed by Al Pacino in a film.
Yes, yeah. Harken it back.
It all circles around.
And by the end of his career, he was up in the the coach's box, and he could see the game. And we were at lunch one day, and we were watching this game where one of my friends was asking about Joe Pa, and he's like, "Do you think he does?" I go, "Fuck no." I go, "He's a recruiting emblem. That's all they put him in a basket, and then when they're gonna go out recruiting, they bring him out." I go, "He's up in the box right now. He doesn't have any headphones on. He has no idea what's being called. There's no game management. He's literally just up there, And that's what. So when I say like, is Ridley Scott just there? Like, is his name attached to it? It felt like he would be there to make a decision. You know,
it felt like he would be. It feels like he's gotten too comfortable with relegating certain decisions to other people and having it be like this simplest version possible.
You handle this scene, you're gonna handle this scene, you'll handle that scene. Everyone take, and I'll be there and just kind of overwatch. And then he can't critically think. So you know, like what creativeness are we gonna get out of a 86-year-old man?
Right.
You know, and this is what that felt like. It just felt like a lack of any sort of enthusiasm whatsoever to make a good film.
Mm-hmm. I was excited when it cut to that first instance of Paul Mescal. I'm going to have trouble with those names. Lucius. When it cuts to him in like the afterlife for a brief moment, it's got like that black and white segment.
Yeah.
It's shot in a very kind of like surreal, ethereal way.
Yes.
And I got excited because like, holy shit, is this going to be like throughout the entire movie? Is this going to be constructed around this sort of idea of like a dreamscape sort of thing? Because we talked about in the previous episode covering Gladiator how Ridley Scott, a certain idea and a certain script had been written for a sequel to Gladiator where Maximus would be resurrected and then cursed to live forever. And he would go through like all these different conflicts like World War II and the Vietnam War, like fucking mobster times, like all this shit to where like he basically be cursed with fighting his entire life.
Right.
And I thought, okay, obviously we're not going to get that because Russell Crowe is like 20 plus years older.
Yeah.
Right. He's not the same guy. But maybe we're going to get an element of that in this movie where it's like, oh, a little bit more of like this dream like
that's
quality.
Where it was going to go?
I was hoping. And
you're so big on the
and quickly in this movie
surrealism in movies.
I want them to go for it. I love it when directors sort of like take that leap and go like, all right, we're going for something in this film.
They did it in
where
The Crow.
It doesn't feel lazy. Yeah, they did it in The Crow. The Crow already is like a fucking fantasy or whatever. But anyway, I was hoping that something like that would be more prevalent throughout this movie. And instead what you get is a very bare bones script that is very much in the vein of David Scarpa, who also wrote Napoleon. I don't know if you...
God, no wonder this thing fucking was so plot thickened.
I know, right? And
oh, my God.
I feel like Ridley just needs to drop this dude because the storytelling in this, you know, lack of visual style aside, is just very bland and almost just kind of a retelling of the first movie.
Yes, it was the exact same. Like they pulled the skeleton from that thing and laid it back down again, and it was just like we can get to this point a different way. And then not only that, just like there's so much plot in this thing for no reason. Like the first one was really nice because of its simplicity. It's a very easy story to follow. And let Russell Crowe and all of the action that's happening around you kind of overtake it. And then there's just like a couple minute details going on or side stories, you know, or, you know. And this one, it felt like everything had a branch going off in one way or another. And like they wanted to have like this political controversy going on for really no reason. And then there was like kind of the payoff sucked and there wasn't really a great payoff anyways. I mean, it, you know, so
I'll tell you what it is and why it feels so hollow compared to the first movie. It's the lack of understanding why the characters are doing what they're doing.
Yes.
So a great example of that is Joaquin Phoenix in the first film. You see his character and you understand why he is the way he is. He's got like a weird fucking Oedipus complex. He's got a bad relationship with his father. He looks like he's been passed over all this time. And obviously we're going to get into spoilers for the first Gladiator, right?
Teeter.
All right, I'll try to not.
Yeah,
I'll dance around it.
I was about to say you don't have to give everything away, but they're like what you've just laid out for Joaquin. Yes, for Russell Crowe. I mean, whatever happens in the first,
but he plays such a good villain in it. One, because of his performance, and two, because the way the script is written.
Yeah,
you understand why he's doing what he's doing. You don't agree with it. Obviously, he's a fucking bastard.
Yeah, but I mean, it makes sense for his character.
It makes sense for his character, and in this
and it plays throughout.
I like the performances from Joseph Quinn and Fred Heschinger.
Yeah, I did too.
I like the way they performed those characters. Couldn't give a shit about like what happened to them or like why they were doing what they're doing.
They didn't really even explain it.
No, they just felt like being evil for the sake of being evil.
We need to have two villains in this thing, or at least possibly antagonists.
Well, it's like okay, I get that, like, and we said spoilers, so like Denzel is obviously like the villain of the movie,
Right?
Like he's the big
well, that's
bad.
what I'm
He's
saying.
the one who wants to grab control and like get a hold of everything. But when you have these guys who are giving these performances, it's like maybe give them like a little bit more than just having them be like cartoonishly evil.
Yep.
Because Joaquin offered so much in the way of that performance. I might even go as far as to say is maybe it's like the best performance he's given. But
He's had a couple good ones.
He's had a few good ones. But you understand more of like why he's doing what he's doing. And in this one, even Denzel's character is just like, yeah, I used to be a slave and now I want power. And that's it.
The only guy.
It's so dry.
That's what I'm saying. The only guy in here that you actually have any sort of attachment to or understand is Lucius.
Yes.
Like that's it. And the problem with it is that story's already been played out. Like
Right, you're already seeing a repeat of Maximus's story from the first movie played out in this version.
Yes.
When you find out that he's his son, which they spoiled in the marketing, which I guess Paul Mescal was not real happy with because he wanted it to be a surprise for the audience like it was for him when he read the script. It's like, oh shit, I didn't realize
know that it was his son.
Right, I didn't know that either until the previews came out.
No, I'm saying I didn't see it in the previews.
Oh, really?
That was the first time I got there, and so
you were genuinely surprised by that.
That was surprising, like yawn. Like, why
Right.
can't we just give this guy his own story?
Yes, that is also a problem. It's like because it's so inherently tied to the first movie.
Yes.
It's like, all right, we have to touch on these things that relate to it. But I still think there could have been a way to make it unique and stand on its own rather than just rehashing a bunch of the same beats from the first film and just doing
everything
and just doing like a poor version of that.
Yeah.
Right?
It was a lot. Yes. A lot more hollow, if you will. Mm-hmm. Everything was a lot more hollow, except the action sequences and some of the fight scenes. But it's not.
And that's what prevents me from saying that this movie's bad.
I mean, it's fun. I will say
it's a fun movie.
It's a fun movie. This thing isn't a world beater. It shouldn't be nominated for anything. The plot is not great, and the story's kind of repeated. But there are some fun sequences in here, and some of the acting. Some is good, for most of it's bad, but
a benefit of having this movie shot the way it is, like accusations of laziness aside, is that you do get a lot of wide angles of what's taking place. Something that I sort of bumped up against in the first Gladiator movie is that Ridley Scott likes to cut a lot in that film, to the point where it becomes almost disorienting, and it's even more egregious in Kingdom of Heaven, but we'll get to that later.
Yes.
Whereas at least in these newer films that he's doing, the battle and action sequences feel very well planned out. Like they feel like they are the focus of Ridley Scott's passion, and they feel like it's him like really in the pocket doing what he wants to do, which is like swords and shields and shit. Yeah. Like the exact same way with Napoleon. The battle scenes in that were like the best scenes. And that's not me trying to sound like, I'm a guy, I like action in movies. The parts where they talk is boring.
No, but you're allowed to say that you can have a good action scene.
Right.
Like that's not, there are bad action scenes.
And if this movie had bad action in it, this would just be a bad movie straight up. Like there are
some bad action in this. Like I'm not gonna,
right?
But he's able to give you some wide shots to really set the scale and the lay of the land. And then when he goes in for his close-ups, or you get onto the set stuff, and he's you have a greater visual about what you're kind of seeing. I think some of it with the original Gladiator was. There is like one wide shot of the Coliseum where you kind of get that feel of the Coliseum.
Yeah.
And then everything else is within the in the wall, so it really feels like a more personalized battle, if you will, and you don't really have the grandeur of all the spectators watching and what the Coliseum meant. And then with this one, they do a really good job of all these wide shots, and like one of the cooler battle scenes was they go out there in those boats, with the sharks in there.
A scene that I would say was way too short.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes, I agree. I mean, that would have been... I think for the most part... 2 out of the 3 Coliseum scenes I liked. But he's able... Like, I thought it was really cool. There are 2 really great shots in this thing that I just like, just in terms of scope and scale and being able to see. One is when Pedro Pascal comes back, and the two emperors are standing there, and they're on the thrones or the steps of the, whatever, the Roman building, whatever the fuck it's called. And, and you're able to see like how important this is, right? And then the other one is the wide shot or the aerial shot of the Colosseum with the water and the landscape of everything that's in the Colosseum, and how they put two islands out there, and you got the boats, and you can just see all of it. And then you get into the thing, and it makes it feel a little bit more grandeur. You know, there's a little bit more grandeur with what you're seeing.
The scope and the production design of this movie is impressive.
Yes.
It'd be even more impressive if he filmed it in a way that made me a little bit more interested in what was going on, but
you don't say.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
Yawning throughout this thing.
So you mentioned some of the performances.
Yes.
I'm curious which ones you enjoyed and which ones you sort of bump up against.
Bump up against is a great way to put it. I enjoyed Lucius. I really did.
Paul Mescal.
Yeah.
I really like him. Have you seen any other movie he's done?
No, I got one on the watch list. I didn't even know he was in it.
Is it After Sun?
No, that's one that you've mentioned. It's called All of Us Strangers.
Yes, I watched that probably 4 months ago, maybe.
Not bad.
Great film.
Okay, yeah,
and he's great in it. He's not the main character, but he's good. He's really good.
I didn't really go through his filmography, but I saw it, and the very beginning of this thing, I was like, oh, great, we're going to have, this guy on here that's not going to really fucking talk, no charisma, no charm. And then throughout the film, I'm like, all right, like he's got a little bit of charm, he's got a little bit of charisma, there's some personality here. He's obviously playing kind of like I don't want to say one note, but like he gets some information and it doesn't impact his character whatsoever.
No, like you can say that like he's a very basically written protagonist who like really doesn't have much to his character other than
I'm filled with rage and I'm gonna destroy everyone and I don't give a fuck.
Right, which again is a rehashed version of what Russell Crowe did in the first film.
Then you actually feel a little bit more. Oh my god.
Right, that's my big issue
too. The fucking first one is so much more impactful with what Russell Crowe's doing and why you're voting for him and rooting for him versus this one where it's just like boom, boom, boom. Already he's a pissed off, teenager that wants to have his revenge. Like his wife, stupid.
His wife gets shot, and like you get a little bit of that impact, but then at the same time, it just kind of feels like Lucius is sort of like just this smarmy kid who wants to kill Pedro Pascal, and that's it.
Kind of. I mean, like they set it up. It's just he's a farm guy that's protecting a city, so there's really nothing there, right? The other Russell Crowe is a general leading thousands of men against the Vikings to take their land for Rome,
right?
And all of what it stands for. And you also find out during this time, it's just because he has that much respect for his leader that he's doing this for him. It's not like he's got anything attached to it. So they try to do it with this one, where it's just I'm protecting my farmland. Unfortunately, they only gave us 30 seconds of farm life, so it's not enough for me to be like, yeah. Hell yeah,
right.
Go fucking protect. It's like
if we get a better sense of like what the loss is for Paul Mescal in this movie, then maybe we can get a little bit more attached to his character and what he's doing.
Literally the Snow Bunny's kiss of the nose, and then they're off to war, and she gets shot, and it's played out. They get into this thing, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna die. I was like, it'd be really cool if they captured them both and like tortured her, and he had to see all that shit. And then was like,
so
that's
cool.
Well, I'm saying, like, all right,
I know what you're saying.
That's building up the rage.
The wording was funny.
Yeah, like that's building it up. Like you're seeing this loved one, and like now I understand why he's so pissed off. Like Russell Crowe in the first one, like he's mad. I mean, essentially his country turned on him. Right.
And there's like a fall from grace sort of thing.
And you get to see him going through these battles, and he's like sweaty and he's near death. And then you find out he's only doing it for Rome, and all he really cares about and loves is his family. And so you're watching and you're like, man, if he did all that for just his country and that's his second love, imagine what he'd do for his first love,
Right.
And this one is just like, oh, here you go, blah, 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 blah.
Right. I am a vessel of rage. I want revenge, blah, blah, blah. Which I would have been fine if they had like adequately portrayed him being like filled with rage the entire time.
Yeah.
And instead he's just kind of like yeah, I've got like a bit of an attitude. Fuck you, buddy.
Yeah.
I'll cut your boy's head off in front of the emperors. I don't give a shit. Whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
And like I said, I like Paul Mescal, but the writing in this did not help him.
It didn't help him, but he with the little that they gave him, I was like, all right, like the guy's got some personality. Like I like his quips, like obviously he plays into a little bit of that pissed off teenager, but if that's all he's got to work with, I mean, he did all right. I don't know how much you make that any better.
Right. How much can you do with that?
Right.
Do you know why Ridley Scott hired him? It's because Ridley Scott watched the miniseries Normal People with him and Daisy Edgar Jones.
Ooh.
And he liked him a lot in that, so he contacted him, had a meeting over Zoom, and was like, hey, buddy boy, you're in. And I imagine Ridley Scott also probably looked at him and thought, this guy looks like he could be like a Roman bust. If you like made a bust out of this guy and put it in a museum, nobody would think twice about him not belonging in it.
No. And
like he looks like a chiseled man.
The problem I think I have with it too is like, and obviously it doesn't, so I'm doing like coaching sports, right? You look at it and you see these guys next to him that are fucking monsters. And then he's in there 5'7", probably like 155 pounds. And it's just like, I really don't think there's any way that he could take on these guys. But then he's got some of the agility, quickness, and he's got the rage, So,
and I kind of like that he's not like super beefed out. Like I like seeing a hero that's not like absolutely fucking jacked.
No, but I'm saying like put the part against him where the other guys aren't. Mm-hmm. You're creating this normalized version of these citizens. You're allowed to be like, all right, let's get a couple guys that are like a little taller and maybe a little bit more bigger than him, but we don't have to get these guys that do these power and like here, is Lucius and he can take these guys on, and if he can defeat him, he can defeat anyone. Like make it a little bit more believable on like if you're gonna play a 5'7" guy, like have it be all right, surround him with 5'10" guys. They're just a little bit bigger. Mm-hmm. And then I can go, okay, like he's not quite as big, but obviously his cunning and his quickness, his agility, is whatever. We'll get him out of these scenarios.
Yeah.
So
the other performances in this.
Pedro Pascal gets like a pass.
He's good. I mean, he's generally just very effortless in the way he plays.
Yes.
Characters in movies. I think you can tell like when he kind of turns it up a little bit more than others.
To some extent.
And it feels like, for this, it's kind of hard to judge because he's in the movie, but he's not.
Sucks.
He's not in it as much as you'd think he'd be.
No, and once again, was just one note guys.
Right, especially for being like the second build actor in this movie. Yeah. Like Denzel's in this movie more than he is.
Oh my god. Yeah. And no, there's Sam. I was talking to Sam about like acting and when these guys get on screen and some of their body language with things not happening that convey feelings, And we just talked about it. So there's a scene where I was like, all right, this is why he gets a pass. Is because like they at the very beginning of the film they go through, they conquer, and they're burning these bodies and. It just shows Pedro Pascal, and
right, he looks kind of over it.
Well, and yeah, so I chuckled in my head because like his body language was like, boy, it's fucking another day in the office, another bad one,
Right.
like burn out, and like you can just tell he's so over it. It was just so dumb. It's like, God, can't wait to get home.
Well, that's the magic of Pedro Pascal is his character acting that way because he's exasperated over like, oh man, I really don't like killing people.
Yeah.
Or is it just him being like, oh, I'm tired of being in movies like this.
God, Jesus
I'm
Christ.
doing like 14 things at once, like every month.
Yeah.
Let me sleep.
And but then outside of that, like every time he's on screen, I'm like, I mean, it's just, it's a whatever.
He's fun to look at. I like looking at him in the Roman armor. I think he's very appropriate for the look of it.
I guess. I just wish these guys had more going on so we don't have to sit there and like have external thoughts about the film on, oh, wait, could he lead an army? Is he a good general? I don't understand. Like he's got like he puts on his helmet and I'm like, I wouldn't trust him with a sword defending my life.
Right.
And have him do some more things where anyways.
Yeah. All right. So Connie Nelson
sucked.
I I'm not going to defend her. It's just
you don't have to.
Oh yeah, with like the script writing in this, it's hard to tell. I think one problem I have, not necessarily with her specifically, is her death feels like it has almost no impact on what's happening.
None
at
of them,
all.
none of it did.
So like they set it up where like she's on this rig and she's tied up on this pole.
Yep.
And they say, "Oh, Lucius, you have to defend her from our soldiers, or else she's gonna die." Blah blah blah. She's an enemy of Rome, and then he manages to like get all the other gladiators free from the guards. So then he enlists their help. It's kind of like a small army fighting against the guards in the Colosseum.
Yep.
He gets up there. She gets shot with an arrow from Denzel Washington, and then not Pedro Pascal. Jesus Christ. Paul Mescal, Lucius, then goes after him and chases him, and they have the fight and blah blah blah. It feels like the moving on from her getting shot and killed, a pretty major character in the canon of these movies, especially when you think about the first film.
Yeah,
she dies, and then it's just on to the next.
Yep,
and on to the next means I got to kill Denzel Washington, and then that's kind of it. And really just like a flat way of displaying all of what had taken place in like the last 20 minutes of this film.
Well, and because of the plot's so shittily written, it had to like go that way, which was just what was really unfortunate about this thing.
Right.
You know, it was, if you're connecting dots, that had to be the next dot that got connected. And there wasn't a real creative way for them to do it. And I shouldn't say it like that. I'm sure there is, especially if you get paid millions of dollars to write a screenplay.
Right.
You could probably come up with a creative way to fucking do it. Right. This felt like one of the laziest, let's just get ass in seats writing and get into that point. And yeah, was there anything that was like in your head going, she's going to get out of this? That's another problem that I have. Like the stakes, like they're really high, but also they feel so low because if you're a betting man, it's like minus 1,000.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like so drastically in the favor that the story has to go this way because they've done nothing up to this point for me to think otherwise. I know she's going to die.
Right.
And at that point, you're going through your scenarios in your head of what would be next.
You know she's going to die. You know that Denzel's going to take power. You know the two emperors are either going to die from Lucius or from each other because they're fucking maniacs. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot about this film that's just easily telegraphed in like what's going on. And I could maybe forgive some of that stuff if it wasn't so paced weird and just kind of uninteresting.
Yes.
You know?
It's just well, and if you had it, you know, and I don't know who's seeing this thing without seeing the first one, but maybe if you don't see the first one, this
lunatics. That's
yeah, right. Like
insane.
I
people.
also would like to just get someone in here and show them the first one and then the second one and be like, you know, the first one was a little bit better. You know, like, yeah, I don't know why I had to go see that second one now.
Right.
You know,
it feels very superfluous.
This is a sequel that I talk about when we talk about sequels of just adding on bullshit to nothing creative, nothing new in the works, you know? So yeah, I was not a big fan of her because she was like one note, she was like crying mom the whole time. And, you know, I guess just because there's so much goddamn plot in this thing, she really she couldn't stretch her wings at all. And I don't know if there's anything there or not with what she was supposed to do, but like she was really just aiding this thing to get to the point of the conquering of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And that's why I just was like, no one in this thing was fantastic. I'll just say that. I mean, Lucius he had some charisma. You know, Pedro Pascal was kind of like just here and there. You know, I mean, a couple times it's nice. It's a little bit refreshing when he's on the screen. The two emperors were kind of fun being psychotic, but like you mentioned,
but like so what?
Like without a backstory or for any reason for them to get to that way, it just gets a point where it's like, oh, it's kind of wearing off. That like, oh, they're evil. I don't know what they're gonna do, but I also don't care.
So let's talk about the big one that we have not touched upon yet. Denzel Washington. So what did you think of him in this film?
You know, I think I liked him for about 30% of this thing and was like, blah, for the last 70%, you know. He started out really, it was really strong and fun. And the guy in the first one, you know, we're not giving anything away, but, you know, if you're listening, you kind of know that the first one has somewhat of the same trajectory with this thing. That slave owner there, with everything that he does, he felt very passionate and was like, you know, it is a chance for freedom, but I also make money off of you, and, you know, God damn it, you're the best, and I wish I was just as good as you, or I you know, whatever. Denzel in this kind of had that feel, right? And then they were like, you know what, we've just got to hang on to him, and we're going to put him into spots he really should never, ever be in under whatever fucking
We almost
world.
need to put this film on his back, because this is what people are going to talk about the most when it comes to the performances, because everybody loves Denzel. Denzel's like undeniably one of the best actors.
Yeah.
And if we give him a lot to do in this movie, that means people are going to like it.
I guess.
And I don't think that necessarily translates 100%.
Now with
I like him in this film. I like him a lot as an actor. I think there is a risk that I think this movie kind of overstepped of too much of him.
You think?
Yeah. Because there's such a thing as like too much of a good thing, right? You get into the candy cupboard, you eat a shit ton of like Reese's Pieces, and you just pass out and die. That's too much of a good thing. I like Reese's Pieces. Too much of it can make you throw up.
There you go.
And not saying that Denzel made me want to throw up, but it is just the sort of thing of where else can we go with this guy that we don't already know, right? Like, what else can we see from him that we can already sort of take away from his character, other than just like, yeah, he's gonna crawl his way to power, maybe? But then it doesn't even feel like the motivations for that become apparent for us until like halfway through the movie, and then all of a sudden he just becomes the villain.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, cool. Maybe would have liked to have seen this a little bit more played out in a way that felt tighter. And that is, I mean, it's just the fucking David Scarpa thing of the script.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel tied together.
I don't blame Denzel for giving us what he gave us.
No, not at fucking all.
That's what the bigger issue here is this guy that wrote him and decided to keep him on. Like, it, you know, the first one, not to say that it's unbelievable, but there are certain elements that you can definitely get behind, right? And
Yeah.
there are certain actions that are taken in the first one that make the story a little bit more legitimate, you know? In this one, nothing felt legitimate whatsoever. Like, I don't want to say I had an issue, but I was kind of like, that's kind of weird. They get into the first fight, and it's, all right, we're going to have these two guys duke it out to the death. If your gladiator says he gets to go into the Coliseum, right? Just for no reason whatsoever. And it was kind of like, all right, you got the maniacs back there. Oh, they said that they're going to, and then, you know, Lucius gets through, and he's kind of standing up to the Emperor. And one, I'm like, all right, if these guys are really badass, he'd be dead. So that they're already losing street cred in my eyes of like, no, you're not that fucking evil and maniacal, or else you would have killed this guy, you know?
Right.
Then you got Denzel, who, for whatever reason, has the trust of these guys and could just tell them whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he literally is doing the Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know, the droids aren't here thing to these guys. Let my guy go. And they're like, sure. And at that point, I'm like, I hope this doesn't get farcical, because this will go a really bad way if, like, all of a sudden he just is now involved and can get whisper in these guys' ears, which he can. Mm-hmm. And he literally, the Roman Empire fucking lasted 1,500 years, and he managed to crumble it in an hour.
Right.
And I'm just like, boy, you have all these things happening for an unrealistic avenue, and you go that route. Like, God damn it. It's so just stupid. It was really just stupid. And poor Denzel in there has to go along with this thing. And I mean, you know, he and like you said, his motives aren't really clear until about halfway through this thing. So you don't really know what he's doing until it gets there. And then by that point, everything's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. We're here now. I've already signed up for the ride.
Right.
You know, like
Yeah.
nothing gets played out. No, they don't lay anything out. There's no strategy into the writing whatsoever that kind of even gives you a glimpse. There are times where you can kind of tell he's cooking some things, right? Like he gets the one guy drunk, the politician, to find out more of the backstory about the son that he's kind of laying out. And that's when I was like, they're going this route, you know? And he's also talking with the guy, and he's kind of waging some money. So you can kind of tell he's dipping his hands here and there in terms of like being able to grab a little bit of power, but also just, you're not going to ascend the throne in 2 days.
Right.
And they just made it happen. And that's so lazy.
It's a very large leap of believability.
Yes,
and there's just too much of it.
And that's why the plot got so thick, because we have to get to this point where this is fathomable.
Well,
right?
it's just without tension too.
Yes.
Like if this stuff can happen, then what even is the point?
Right.
And you know, again, a good cure for that would be just interesting characters and like reasonings of like why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, they
well-defined characters and types of characters that can anchor your film, even if it's a simple plot. Because you know, fucking the first Gladiator movie wasn't complicated.
No, that's what I said. It's a simple. His stories were all very simple,
right?
And up to a certain point, when he just turned into, maybe it's the Scarpa effect.
Maybe I really think he needs to drop that dude.
Yeah. But yes, it's a simple story. It's a very simple story.
Absolutely.
Guy gets revenge for, losing his family.
And anything that isn't like focused on that or ties into it in some way is just superfluous. That's the word of the day.
I love it. I mean, but it really, this whole movie is superfluous. Like,
yeah.
It's just really, I don't want to say unfortunate, because I have no idea where this would have went, but like, they just kept dragging out these bones and just laying them down. And
right.
like,
let's play with the old skeletons again and remember the magic of the first movie.
Yeah, and they thrust the first movie onto us so much. That was the intro. I really like the oil paintings with some of the backstory there at the very, very beginning of, no dialogue. They just got the sweeping music, but they're showing you everything that kind of happened in the first one. So had you not even seen it, you have a decent idea, like, through how stories would have went back then too, with the oil paintings.
It's the best it's the best visualization in this whole movie.
Yeah,
is that opening sort of like painterly animation sort of thing, because it's like the only thing in this film that feels even uniquely cinematic.
Yes,
it's very visually boring movie otherwise.
Yeah. Yes.
Should they have gotten Spencer Treat Clark back to play Lucius like he did in the first film?
The
former child star turned into grown up
accountant
movie boy. I think he's still an actor. He's just obviously not in as much shit.
Lifetime movies.
Have you seen what he looks like grown up?
No.
Have you seen the movie Glass, the M. Night movie? That's like the sequel to Unbreakable and Split and whatever.
Yeah, with our boy
Bruce.
Glass is with they got Samuel L., they got Bruce, and they got James McAvoy.
Yep. Yeah. So in Unbreakable, Spencer Treat Clark is the kid.
Yeah.
And he's also the same character in Glass, but he's just grown up. He's like in his 20s.
Yeah.
He looks about the same.
Okay.
And he's got very dark eyes. Like his irises and his pupils kind of blend together. So it just looks like he has black eyes.
Okay.
He's kind of terrifying looking.
Okay.
And I could maybe see why they didn't cast him in this movie to play the same character.
He also might not be a lead in a $200 million budget film.
I mean, maybe. But could you just imagine like the balls on Ridley Scott if he had done that? I could see someone like Clint Eastwood doing that because he made that fucking 1517 to Paris, which had like the actual guys that were a part of that event in the movie.
Yeah.
For really just
the
poor decision.
No, I can't because I don't think that he could be the lead of a film. Like,
right.
Lucius in this one, Paul Mescal, had barely any acting lines, and I mean, he's probably the only thing that is mildly intriguing in this. So I mean, like, imagine that guy being in here doing that. Fuck.
I mean, it'd kind of be interesting just like having this dead-eyed kid come back and play this character in a way that's like supposed to be filled with rage. Maybe could have worked. I don't know.
That's true. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think about it. I was like, well, you lose some of that charisma, but you also gain a little bit of, okay, I'm kind of invested because he was in the first one.
Right.
Like that's about it, which the trade-off almost seems about comparable.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Was there any other thoughts we had on Gladiator 2? I think we covered it pretty well, if I do say so.
No, actually, I think this one almost hurts the first one too because of Russell Crowe. And I don't know. I think we talked about it in the first one. I don't really remember, but he had the love of his family, and that's what set him off. And then you just find out he has this illegitimate kid.
Right.
The whole time I'm just thinking about this, I was like,
do they hint at it in the first movie at all?
I was trying to remember, and I'm like, they had to have for us to get to this point. And then I started really laughing. Like, boy, it's really remarkable that you can create a shitty second version of this thing and then harm the first one in the process.
Well, it's funny because we were talking about this earlier. The revelation that Lucius is Maximus's son was something that not only did people just not know that, but they put it in the trailer for it.
Yeah,
and
apparently.
I saw it, and I had the thought of, oh, really? They're gonna just reveal that? Because like in the back of my mind, I thought that makes sense that would be like a story beat that they'd go with. I don't understand why they played their hand and showed it in the trailer.
Test audiences probably they're like, why is this all so familiar to the first one if it's supposed to be a completely different story?
Right.
And it's like, well, we got to make sure people at least know what's going on. I had no clue. There's a scene with the young boy. I think he's having a dream. Lucius is having a dream about like when he was a kid and he's running away and he runs up to Connie Nielsen at something and she's like the Roman Empire or the Roman guards were there to take the boy and this lady tells him to run. I'm like, that kind of looked and sounded like Connie Nielsen. I was like, oh, I wonder if this is gonna be the kid. And then, it gets played out and you find out. Then I'm like, what? In the first one, I don't really remember I thought he was supposed to be the Emperor's kid. There was some incest going on. Like, that's what I led to believe.
Right.
Not that it was. And then it's like, well, if that's his kid, but he had another wife, and when did he hook? And that boy was about that kid's age. So maybe he wasn't that honorable. Like, how the fuck do you just
tarnish the legacy of
the
Maximus?
whole canon? Like, you got this guy and everything's built around his purity and awesomeness. Is like, no, he committed adultery and he had an illegitimate child that he completely cast and shunned. And now he's going to come back and in his name fight for him.
Right.
Like, oh man, that's kick ass. Wow. Great job. Oh yeah, and we're gonna have this guy overthrow the empire in a matter of 72 hours through gambling. Like, sweet. Okay,
Thanks, David Scarpa.
Yeah. God, I love his movies.
All right. Shall we get into ratings for
Sure.
Gladiator 2?
Yeah.
I guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
So we were pretty not harsh, but like we were kind of dunking on this film the entire time.
Oh, it caught a lot of strays.
It did. Well, they're not strays. They're very much aimed pistols at this film.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too. Firing line.
But I will reiterate, I do think this movie is still fun. Mm-hmm. I think it's got some kind of worthwhile stuff in it. Mostly some of the performances, but also just like the way the action is portrayed. You get a lot of good like sound design in it, some like meaty sword fights that are really fun to watch. Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Denzel Washington, they're all doing their thing. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of, it's sort of, the idea of like getting the band back together can be fun, and it is fun for like a few songs, But then you just kind of watch the set play out, and it's a little bit sad that these guys are still in their 80s and they're, kind of rocking out on stage in front of a bunch of 60-year-olds. Quite an analogy I just made there. My final score on this is a 6 out of 10.
Nice.
I think it's one that, just kind of amplifies my feelings on this surface level, but also just like the deeper issues I have with this film that I don't think I can ever like raise this score up.
No.
This is
an empty vessel of a film. And like we said, dunking on it, firing lines, shooting. Yeah, it caught a lot of gruff. I will say that it's easy on the eyes. It's fun. I think another term I've heard is a Frank film.
What does that mean?
No, not a lot of thinking involved watching it. And this is one, while it is like very plot.
Oh, like
thick.
The film Frank, like Michael Fassbender?
No. Describing a person watching this thing, like a Frank film.
Just someone named Frank.
No, I guess you'd call it a generalization.
Gotcha.
Empty person there. They sit down, they watch it, and they get done, and they go, "Wow, that was a lot of action. Not a lot happened. I followed the whole thing, and everyone on there made me smile." That'd be like a Frank film. Anyways,
Fuck you, Frank.
This thing is very much of that kin, but you can butcher those films or do a decent job, and I think this thing does a decent job along those lines. Like, not a lot of thinking. You don't have to really pay attention throughout this thing. Like, if you got up and go to the bathroom a couple different times, I don't think you'd lose anything that's happening. Some of the shots are stunning, or at least what we're seeing on the screen is stunning, and just it's whatever. So I gave this thing a 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
because I think this is one that when it probably comes to streaming, very easy for me just to throw on in the background if I just need to have something on the TV and catch it and be like, oh, I'm gonna watch this or that. I mean, as much as we're kind of ridiculing it, it does keep a straight line, and it does keep the same tone of it just being like a whatever. But I don't want to say anything confusing. It's just a very bland movie.
Yeah.
So 7 out of 10.
Speaking of Ridley Scott, we watched a movie that I recommended.
Man. This one, yeah.
This is going to be an interesting discussion. I think we're going to be in different spots, but we checked out Kingdom of Heaven. Now, when we recommended this film, I maybe had like a knowledge that there was a director's cut, but I didn't really say it specifically when we recorded our last episode. But then when it came to the time of watching this movie, I looked up information about it, and I saw online that the director's cut version of this movie, which is 40 minutes longer than the theatrical cut, so it's a 3-hour long film, is very widely praised compared to the theater cut of this movie. And so I texted you. I was like, hey, I think we should do the director's cut so that we can maybe talk about the better version of this film, if there's one out there. Because this movie's got like a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes. 36. Pardon me. It's got very mixed reception. Didn't make a ton of money, right?
I don't think so, because I remember when I went and saw this thing, I think there was 5 people in theaters, and it had been out for like a week or two. So
had a budget of $130, made $218. So
that's not bad.
About probably broke even if we're considering like marketing costs and everything like that, right?
I think back in that time too, though, you had the internet. I mean, it wasn't like it's now with guerrilla marketing and just pumping it out everywhere.
Right. So
it actually could have been more expensive.
It probably made a profit after everything was said and done with like DVD sales and shit like that.
So it didn't lose money. I'll say that.
Didn't lose money, but it wasn't like a smash hit like Gladiator or anything like that. So, we checked this film out. We both watched the director's cut version. You have seen the theater cut version of this film.
Saw it in theaters.
I have not seen the theatrical cut. I watched about the first 5 minutes just to get a sense of how different it was. And boy, oh boy, there's a lot of differences. But to summate this film, stars Orlando Bloom as Balian of Ibelin, who is a kind of lowly blacksmith whose wife dies after she's accused of being a witch by the priest, who also happens to be his brother.
Yep.
All this information that you don't get in the theatrical cut, by the way. And then
Yes. Okay. That to me makes sense. But I will talk about why it. Yes.
So then he gets released because his brother he sort of like convinces them to release him. He is a blacksmith. He makes money. He brings money into the town, and then all of a sudden, Liam Neeson, Barrison of Ibelin, rides in, otherwise known as Godfrey, and he goes to Orlando Bloom and he's like, "Hey, you're my son. By the way,"
He doesn't say that.
he doesn't say that, but
implied.
It's implied, and then like later, it's sort of like more so confirmed through the dialogue.
I don't think he ever says, "Hey, you're my son."
He
I
doesn't
think about
say
the
it.
closest he gets is "I knew your mom very well," with like a wink and a nudge.
In the theatrical cut, I think he says, "I'm your father."
Now he might that one because I didn't watch the theatrical one prior to this one.
Right. There's going to be a lot of discussions of like the different versions of this movie. But
Possibly. I mean, this one's now gone.
essentially, he tells him that Jerusalem is a place where you can seek forgiveness. Me and my boys are heading there. If you want to join us, we'll be hitting the road.
My boys.
Me and my boys. And
Me
so
and the Knights, bro.
yeah, me and the Crusaders, dog. So then Orlando Bloom joins him on the journey. Godfrey dies along the way, and then all of a sudden, Balian of Ibelin finds himself embroiled in a very hot issue political conflict between the king, King Baldwin, played by Edward Norton, and
okay, that's why that made sense.
and Saladin, the leader of the Muslims, who there's a conflict between the two, specifically involving Brendan Gleeson's character Reynald of Shelaton, and then Martin Skaska's character Guy de la Zuginen.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, there's also Sibella of Jerusalem, who is sort of like the love interest character that's introduced about a quarter way through the film. Spoiler for Kingdom of Heaven.
Yes.
Now, I had teased that I think we're going to be on different hills when it comes to this movie.
Yes.
I don't think this will be as passionate of a discussion as Baby Driver was. Because your issues with the film, I can sympathize with quite a bit, especially since you have seen the theatrical cut of this movie. You have an idea of what the basics of this story is within the 2 hour, 20-minute window.
I get to, I've seen the differences.
I've never seen the theatrical cut. I've only seen 5 minutes of it. And this was like my first viewing of this story was through the lens of this director's cut.
Yes.
And me going into this, really not having any idea of what they included, what had been cut out of the original.
Yep.
I do have to say, I did quite enjoy this film.
Oh, listen, I am happy that you did, because I think that your enjoyment from the director's cut is probably my enjoyment with the theatrical, which is funny because we probably would go inverse if we watched it.
Exactly. And I think it's a good sort of study in how you approach movies in terms of not only just director's cuts, but also like your experience with the film overall, right?
Well, the thing I have with this is that, and you would probably have to watch the theatrical, because I think there's so much fat in here that just got added with, I don't want to say very little payoff, but like the characters that get built, they're not to say the central point of this, but I don't think they have to have a lot of depth for where they're going. And I that might be wrong to say, because obviously of what's getting played out with the religious aspect of this, and kind of some of the cleansing of the soul, if you will, with what's going on. But they added so much more into this with some of the political aspects of it and the religious aspects that, like, once again, it gets a little bit watered down with what is really what he's going for. And then when it comes to the true, and I guess I'm talking about Balin right now, Orlando Bloom's character, is that, at the end of the day, he's just a good person. So
that's a big thing with this movie. He's very much kind of a Mary Sue.
Yes, and
he's almost like a too perfect of a boy.
So the issue I have with it is if you have that character who is without flaws, if you will, or at least some of the flaws are forgiven for how he approaches life now, you don't have to have all the build up to that, and I think that from what I was watching is there's just so much more fat that got added into this thing, and storylines to be added that I now see why they have editing bays.
See, you're saying a lot of added fat, and I'm not disagreeing with your perspective. I enjoy a lot of what they included in this version of the movie. I think that, in my opinion, without it, it makes the characters a little bit less interesting. It makes what's going on feel a little bit more full when you include this stuff. And you were talking about like, oh, they include this stuff. There's a lot more exposition.
The storyline with the kid. There's a kid in here that they have to...
Which I learned that in the theatrical cut that there's not even like the son character from Ava Green.
He wasn't even needed.
I think it adds a little bit to her character that is included because... Well, and I guess this is where like my lack of understanding of the theatrical cut just maybe kind of hinders my point of view. But I don't know. I feel like it does a lot in terms of just her character shift in the movie. Because I don't know in the theatrical cut if like there's a reason why she goes from sort of like love interest to like sort of despondent princess character. Where like she kind of has that breakdown.
She obviously can't take control of the kingdom, right? Mm-hmm. So now it's on to Guy, and she knows the type of man that Guy is. So that's why she kind of has that like, all right, I really want to be with you, Orlando, but I can't because I'm a Guy, and I know what he's gonna do. So I think that's when she turns into like, all right, I'm just gonna turn into this. Like you said, despondent person because I have no control over what's going on. And
I think they, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe the connection is they include the son character because after the king passes away, then the next heir to take the throne would be that kid, right?
No,
and then,
it'd be I think it's him.
But in this cut of the movie, they declare him king. Like they put the crown on him. They have
the
like
kid?
Yeah.
They did?
Uh-huh. I'm pretty sure.
Maybe.
And then after they declare him king is when she discovers, oh, he's also got leprosy.
So I gotta kill him.
So I don't want him to live like a miserable life like my brother did, so I'm going to do like the merciful thing and let him like drift away. And obviously she's going to have like a lot of guilt over that, so... It's sort of like the 1-2 punch of not only is Guy going to get power because my son is dead, but I'm the one who killed him.
She made the choice to kill her son. Like, I can't...
Right, but it was sort of like from the perspective of like a mercy killing. Like, I don't want to see him suffer in this life. Like, you get little teases of it throughout of like, oh, he can't feel pain.
Now, if I had seen him become king, but then I would have also said, well, now, if he's king, you have a chance to do what you need to do. It's just... Sure. I mean, I understand. I guess I should say this. I understand with some, like I said, there's a lot of exposition and a lot of that gets added to help with the characters. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, there has no impact on the story whatsoever. And she has no impact on the story whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? So like to have all that go on, it's a fun little tidbit to have, I guess. But it's also like, okay, like what's it needed then? I mean, it just is kind of like a fat to me. It's fat.
I don't know. I think it makes a choice that I don't think you see in too many other movies like this, where you have like the love interest character in this type of movie, and they're almost sort of relegated to just that being like the love interest character. There's not really much for them to do besides fall in love with the main character, Pretty Boy.
Had her. I mean, she could have did other things. I agree. Yes, I know what you're saying.
Sure,
I mean,
I'm not disagreeing with you that she could have done other things, and maybe that would have been the better option. But for me, it's interesting enough to give this movie a little bit more depth and to make it feel like there's like a grandiosity to this thing. We were talking about how Ridley Scott isn't the greatest storyteller. He's not like making super complicated Christopher Nolan Tenet type shit. But I think
not even great. I mean,
what'd you say?
Nothing.
Not gonna defend Tenet on this podcast.
It sounds like you're trying to.
I was not. I'm just
Get
saying
that clip.
I'm using that as a comparison because
know
he
what
likes to
you're saying.
write complicated shit.
Yes.
Maybe I should have used Primer. Anyway.
Yes. No, but you gotta go with characters, like good. Yeah. Anyway, yes.
I think that when you include stuff like this in a film that is this historically aesthetic, this sort of like grand scale and wide scope, I think it helps to create like the depth of the world that we're in, especially when we are spending so much time with these characters trying to understand their relationships and like what's going on in the grand scheme of things. Maybe not just like the core story, but like who these people are. And to me, that was enough for me to enjoy that part of the film.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not saying that it doesn't help. I shouldn't say this tainted it. The theatrical version is clean. It's cut. This is like we're talking about a story that's pretty rich with a lot of things going on. This was just another thing that got added to it that I feel like you kind of get a little bit of the gist throughout the film of what this world's like. And that just played into it more with a character that isn't necessarily doing much to enhance the story or continue the story on. It's just another piece that we get to see. And not only that, like I said, had I seen him crowned king, I don't remember. I thought there was conversation that he might, through the bloodline, right? Because I mean, to me, it makes sense. But to make that choice for the kid, it's another one. I mean, I know it's difficult, but it feels like I don't know.
Sure.
If you're doing that, let's have a little bit more around those lines of being able to see that stuff. About these tough decisions that we have to make. And I don't want to knock that.
Right.
Because I do respect what you're saying. I totally get it. And it is to some extent helping with the character, but it doesn't help with the story.
I think something that maybe does help with the story is the stuff that they include in the beginning.
I agree
with his wife, with his brother,
Yes.
who's the priest.
Yes.
Because watching the
Yes.
first 5 minutes of this,
Very confusing.
it's very choppy. The way it's edited, the way that they just exclude all these different facts about what's going on,
Yes.
why they're burying the woman,
Yes.
why the guys like they don't even mention that Orlando Bloom is in jail at the beginning of the film.
He is in jail?
Yeah, in the director's cut, he's in jail. In the theatrical cut, he isn't.
Why, he was in jail?
He was in jail because they burned his wife because they thought she was a witch or something.
No, they cut off her head.
They cut off her head.
She committed suicide.
Yeah, but I think the implication was they like forced her to commit suicide or something.
She had a stillborn. She had a stillborn, and I think she took her life because she couldn't handle the depression. And they cut off her head because she was she committed suicide, and she was being sent to hell.
Either way, there was a perception of her that was unfavorable, right? Like people in the town did not look upon her in a good way.
I don't know about the town. It was really the priest that was making all these decisions. His brother. Like I didn't realize that guy was such a piece of shit.
Right.
And he was the one that was making, because the guy that was burying his wife was like, we have to bury her, and then the guy said, well, we have to take the head first, because she was, whatever, and the guy's like, that's your brother, like you can't do that, and he's like, yeah, I know, whatever, and then then Orlando Bloom goes to the gravesite and he's sitting there, and he goes, was she buried here or was it here? And then it's gonna be hard for her to find heaven without a head. Like he was really being like,
yeah, he's a fucking
piece
prick.
Of shit to be a piece of shit.
Right, he's a fucking asshole.
But it did make a lot more sense seeing that, because I'm like watching, for me, from my perspective, they didn't lay any of that out. Like I knew like Godfrey came back, and I had like this little bit of memory, and they're talking about it. I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense on building up some of this tension of what's going on, because there's with the scene of.
Because like when you watch the theatrical cut of this, the priest is just an asshole. You don't even know that he's like brothers with him.
Right.
and he's just like harping on him about his like dead wife who's in hell, and
Yes.
then Orlando Bloom just stabs him.
Which made sense in the movie, though. You know, like,
Sure, like if someone was talking shit like that to me, I'd stab them too.
Yeah.
But
this has more build up to it.
right, and the theatrical version makes it a lot more personal.
Yes.
With it being his brother,
Yes.
and like there's this whole like familial thing to it.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, there's exposition there that could be, you know, needed, and there's a small payoff.
Right, and it sort of explains why Orlando Bloom's performance in this movie is very just kind of like quiet and meditative and sort of like kept to himself.
He's not a good actor.
I mean, I don't disagree that he's not the most interesting guy to put in your movie, but I think if you want to sort of hit a target on that sort of stoic kind of pretty boy looking actor, I don't know if you can get any better than Orlando Bloom. If you like relegate his part to as few lines as possible and not have him do like that complicated of shit, then I think he can work in a film like this, especially when the character is so like kind of just mild-mannered, looking for forgiveness in Jerusalem, trying to do the right thing.
Pick a good-looking bland guy, and I bet you could probably substitute him in there.
Sure.
Like, I bet you Brad Pitt probably could have played that role, too. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. Brad Pitt might have made it a little more...
Go watch Troy. Yeah, there you go.
But I don't know. That's still not like a knock on Orlando Bloom in this movie, because I think he is serving it okay. It's just...
I'm not... They wrote him to be that way, and he played the part that was written. He just has zero charisma, so like...
Exactly. It's like they took Legolas from Lord of the Rings and they put him in this movie.
Yeah, like it was very annoying with the casting choice on this, because I was like, all right, you got the part down, but I also feel like you just picked at whatever part of the like you could have grabbed any one, and you probably could have grabbed a different actor that would have made him a little bit more charismatic, or at least, dude, there's scenes that are going on, and he just sits there and he stares at you, and you know. Yeah, I guess with the turmoil of what's going on with his life and his soul, and him trying to get to the Holy Land to cleanse himself and to free his wife, you know, in the religious landscape, it's fine.
Right.
But he doesn't do much more than that besides stand there.
He's very much kind of protagonist.
Yeah.
Live vicariously through this guy. If you were playing him in a video game, you could easily like self-insert into it and experience what he's experiencing.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't know. Maybe in this type of movie where like all the other characters and performances seem to be way more interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not necessarily the worst thing. And, you know, we can talk about some of that. I think the performances in this movie are very fucking good. So you've got Liam Neeson doing his fucking Liam Neeson thing where he's got the gravitas. He's playing like the father figure.
He looks so great in this thing.
He looks amazing.
Right? Like he looks like he's like
straight out of the Crusades.
Yeah, like he comes back and he's going through and he's got the tarp on, you know, with the emblem, and he's got his hat on, his helmet, his war helmet. He's on the horse, and it's just like, man, fuck! Like he looks like he just came back from battle.
I know he's really good in this. He's got some really great lines in this.
Yes,
where I think it's like him wanting Orlando Bloom to like train with him to like sword fight.
Yeah,
and I think Orlando Bloom says something like, "Oh, is this fair? Should we be doing this?" And he's like, "I once fought with a sword with an arrow through my testicle."
Yeah,
You're like, "Wait, what?" And then he just keeps going.
Yeah, but it's believable, you know.
Right. And also that line where he says, "I know your mother has taken on many bastards. I don't think I was around when she had you, though."
Yeah, Tagi.
Tagi is very, very good shit.
Yeah.
I can't even like do it justice. I'm paraphrasing, of course. But, he's wonderful in this movie. Fucking David Thewlis just chewing it up whenever he rides in on that horse. Whenever he speaks, it's just like, yeah, this guy fucking belongs in like old English religious times. Like,
he was, I really like.
I love David Thewlis.
I wish he was a little bit more in this.
Me
with
too.
Like the what do you? God, oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue.
I don't know. I don't know what's on your tongue. I haven't looked at it in a while.
The Big Lebowski, Peter Stormare in there. The type of philosophy. It's
nihilism.
Yeah. Like a little bit of a nihilistic approach with this, with the backdrop of with the backdrop of religion.
One of these days, I'm going to recommend Naked, and we're going to talk about that movie.
Okay.
I have it on Criterion. I would watch it with you,
Interesting.
and we'll discuss it. Because that's like the David Thewlis movie.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I appreciate him as an actor. I mean, ever since The Island of Dr. Moreau popped up and I got to see him stretch a little bit in that, I was like, all right.
I wish he was in the documentary. I wanted to hear his thoughts on what happened. Because he's not in it. Like,
no, he was so over it.
You see like a shot, like one shot of him like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And that's it. And what's funny is he's the main character of the movie.
He's over it.
He absolutely did not want anything to do with anything else going on.
He was really, I mean, but he was fantastic in this, and I really love like his, I do it for the land, but I know that it means nothing. Mm-hmm. And I liked every time that he came in to kind of, but he also felt like he was always coming in to provide some wisdom.
Yeah.
Which you can't, it's just the way it's written. But he did a great job.
He's sort of like the cool older brother who like comes in and like spills some awesome lines.
Yeah, exactly. On a skateboard. And then it's like, dude, you're going to get in trouble with mom and dad later. He's like, yeah, but whatever.
Yeah.
It just like takes off.
And then you see a severed head in a pile. And you get real sad.
And you're like, damn it.
Brendan Gleeson as Reynold. Using his fucking Brendan Gleeson energy, kind of like scumming it up in this movie.
Very scummy.
Yeah, very just like
very
kind of
scummy.
Charlatan.
Yeah.
Sort of like brash. There's that quiet meditative moment where he's like, well, I guess if I don't do this, somebody else will.
Yeah.
Where he's like talking about like
raiding the caravans.
Yeah. And it's like weirdly introspective moment before they like go and fucking kill all these guys.
Yeah.
You've got Martin Skaskas as Guy de Luzgan. I cannot pronounce any of those names to save my life, but I recognized him in something else. The Equalizer.
Oh.
Going back to Denzel, he's the bad guy in the first Equalizer film.
Tying it all together.
He plays Teddy. He's like the tatted up Russian guy.
Oh, nice.
Michael Sheen is the priest, a.k.a. his brother, in this cut of the movie, who is just really well cast at playing smarmy fucking assholes who you want to see get punched in the face.
That's what he popped on there. I was like, oh, I think it's that guy. And I go,
Right.
God, he plays it so well.
And if you watch the theatrical cut of this, you're just like, Michael Sheen's playing like a bit part? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on here?
And
He's
he just
only in like 2 minutes of this film.
Knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, he's great.
Yes, being a piece of shit.
Right, because he plays one in the Twilight movies. He plays one in Midnight in Paris.
Yeah.
I think he plays another one in a movie we talked about, I think, but I can't remember.
It's okay.
I had it in my memory banks thinking about this movie, and now it's just lost. I can't reach it anymore. Fucking Edward Norton as King Baldwin. I thought he was really good.
It's a great voice performance.
Yeah. It reminded me of how John Hurt played the Elephant Man. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
No. I've seen clips. Not like it was on TV when I was real little. I remember watching. I was very disturbed. Mm-hmm. So I've not gone back to it.
Right. Very kind of like subtle, sort of kind.
Yeah.
Melancholic performance from him. I liked his mask.
Yeah.
The custom poster that I have for this movie on Letterboxd is him sitting on his throne with the mask on. I'll pull it up for you and show you right now. There it is.
Yes.
Very, very good look. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
Ava Green. What do we think of Ava Green in this movie?
And that's where and this. Yeah, she was all right. I think...
Yeah, I don't disagree.
This thing that... And I'm not going to knock her. It just didn't need a love interest in it. There's so much else going on that we don't need to have that element thrown into here to add another layer to the plot. Like, I think... And it's not her fault. I mean, she was fine doing what she did.
Absolutely.
It's just that it kind of feels like it's shoehorned in there to make sure that we get some of the female demographic in there and that we get to see. But she really does. She doesn't do much to aid the story or kind of continue it on. I mean, and you could have had easily the Guy taking down the king and supplanting himself through a mutiny. Like, it's just a very... Yes. And so, no, she was all right. I mean, she played one note, and she kind of, she had a little bit of a presence there to help Orlando understand more of the landscape.
It's just, the unfortunate sort of like love interest thing where like the only prominent female character in this movie is just sort of relegated to that role.
Yeah.
Not really giving much else to do. And that's kind of why I like the business in the director's cut. It's like at least she gets a little bit more of something to sort of work with in this film.
I mean, that's why I call it fat.
Sure.
Because, in the theatrical version, like if you watch it, we didn't need so that's where I stand at. We didn't need the love interest. So to even add more into that element of it just isn't really worth it. Now, but that's what I'm saying. I get what you're saying, because to have a character like that really has nothing to work with, to give her a little bit of that helps out that character. Yeah. I just don't think that character was even really pertinent to the plot itself. We could have eliminated that branch altogether.
Right. And then finally, Jeremy Irons.
Oh, I loved him in this.
Fucking great. He's doing like his sort of Scar voice in this film.
Yeah, he's the marshal, so he's like trying to tame both sides.
He looks so good in this movie.
Him and Liam looked like they could have been in the Crusades or of the time. Right?
I know. I'm kind of sad we didn't get a scene of the two of them together.
Yeah, because he's like, Godfrey was my best friend.
Right? Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh!
Jeremy Irons in this movie, if you put me in front of him and had me describe the internet to him, he would kill me 100%.
Oh, yeah.
And I would deserve it. Without question. Without doubt.
I thought he was so, Liam, I remember not being in it for that long. And, when I first saw it, I don't know who he is. And then I'm watching it this time, I was like, God, I really wish they could have brought him into battle with Orlando Bloom, because his presence alone, and then you get Jeremy Irons in there, would elevate so much more of my attention of what's going on. Mm-hmm. Besides Orlando just looking like a lost puppy throughout the thing and being. That was another annoying thing. Was the king brings him in there and they're playing chess, and he goes, there's always a move. You always fear that move because it could be your last. And he goes, I built a fort. What do you think about my fort? You should make it like a star. So then he goes, boy, you're just absolutely.
You're the best boy I've ever met.
Marvelous at war strategy. Come help me set up my army. Right. And I'm just like, the fucking blacksmith is a genius, He's finding water. He's irrigating the land.
And I think this is maybe kind of purposefully done with his look with the long hair and the short facial hair. He's
Jesus,
basically Jesus in this movie.
Yeah, he
can do no wrong. He is free from sin.
Yeah,
he is doing everything he can very selflessly.
Yes.
The only thing he really does in this movie that we see is a sin is he fucks Ava Green, and that's really it. Right?
It's kind of adultery, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
She said it, but she made it seem like it wasn't.
I mean, Guy seemed like it was okay that he was maybe getting cucked a little bit, right?
Simp boy.
He had some suspicions, and he wasn't a pure boy himself.
No, he was definitely getting his own elsewhere too.
Yeah, he went to the sauna girl and was like, "Hey, want to fuck?
Yeah,
you
want low self-esteem, Guy.
Yeah, you want to be my wife? Well, you can pretend to be her for 2 minutes.
Yeah, if generous.
Right. 30 seconds and a nice pat on the butt.
Yeah,
that's it.
Well, actually, she probably went to the guillotine after that in fear of running her mouth.
The guillotine?
Whoa, that's what she got beforehand. Am I right?
Damn, that's why he nicknames it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think. I want to throw this in here before I forget.
Okay.
There's a moment in this film, maybe not a moment, just a sort of general sentiment that's in the later section, where I think Orlando Bloom's performance works the best. And I think he sort of works the best, and it's the same sort of energy he has when he plays Legolas in Lord of the Rings, where he kind of has a devil-may-care attitude, and he goes into battle head first, kind of whatever happens. I'm going to do the best that I can.
Plays into the selflessness.
For the people that I'm defending. Yeah, plays into the selflessness, but also gives you an idea of this guy is ready to go. Mm-hmm. He's full on charging in. He's got this sort of kind of smirk on his face while doing it. And there's like a little bit of fun he's having while doing those things.
Yeah.
Like a little bit.
Yeah.
Not saying it totally absolves any of the issues that you and I have with him as a character, but I think that there is a reason why you cast him in this movie if you want to sort of have that energy to it.
Could have
right?
cast Robbie from War of the Worlds in this thing.
Sure, but you also want to, if you're Ridley Scott, advertise this movie and get people in it, so you put Orlando Bloom on it.
And not Robbie.
Right. And you want to get people in it, and people say, oh, Legolas is in this.
Yeah.
So when you have those scenes of him being like a little bit electric, it's refreshing. It's nice to see him do something that isn't just like, I am New Age Jesus.
Yes.
I am Crusader Jesus coming through.
No, I agree. I think that's why, from a theatrical standpoint, I like this when we get to that point, because you're not worn out from him being on the screen for 2 hours and 40 minutes prior to that. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
and I with this one too, I think they like I said, some of the exposition, I think in the first one, if you added a couple scenes from this one, it does help aid that story and aid the film. But I think some of it is just so long, like drawn out.
A little bit long in the tooth.
You know, there's scenes with Orlando Bloom just like sitting and staring, and it's just we're holding on to it like we've already got the idea about like what's behind this guy.
I know, but here's my thing. I like that shit. I like shit like that where it just kind of lingers and it's just like a little bit too long, because I don't know. I like living in the bones of this movie. I like the way that this movie looks. I
Yes.
like the way it's set up with like the aesthetic and like the whole like Crusader sort of medieval angle to it.
Right.
And I don't know. I think this movie has a lot going for it that I can just get behind. I will say my favorite part of this movie is the first act. Is like the first sort of like 30, 40 minutes where like you're spending time with Orlando and Liam Neeson and like his sort of ragtag crew that he's got on their way to Jerusalem. If the whole movie was like that, I would have absolutely loved it, right?
It would have been interesting. Yeah.
It would have been very interesting, but after a certain point they have to get to Jerusalem, so then it becomes like a more like sort of desert aesthetic where like everything's a little bit hotter. Whereas I really liked the sort of like cold, steely blue look to this movie that it had for like the first chunk of it.
It fits into his emotional state.
Right. Fits into his emotional state. That's when I think things are a little bit more interesting, not only just for him as a character, but just for the movie in general.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend this is a perfect movie. As much as I enjoyed this film, it is a little bit dragging in the second act specifically.
You don't say.
Right.
Actually, I like the second act though.
Sure.
So that's my
There's
favorite.
things I like about it too.
When they get to, I mean, so they're setting the stakes, you know, and I really liked some of the. I love political controversy going on and some of the strategy that involve, having to, Big Brother-esque, like you have to be able to talk to the right people to make sure that you're put in the right position. And Orlando Bloom is almost just like a chess piece in this thing.
Right.
Throughout, and it's not necessarily that he's in control of what thoughts or where his agenda is going to be. It's literally. I think the downside of it is him being boy genius or Jesus, just going through. So there's like really no harm that could be impacted on him whatsoever. But I should say, whatever. I like all three acts of the theatrical version of this thing. It just got so fucking drawn out. It was.
Sure, and maybe that's where like sort of the negative of the director's cut can come in for me.
Yes,
is that it is a long runtime, and you do feel it.
The second act, for sure.
Right, and I think that part of it is too. A lot of it just becomes sort of the setup of what the last act is, which obviously, I like setup. I like the reasonings behind these things sort of taking place. Like you see the dominoes fall over,
right.
But at the same time, there is a lot going on with that it's like, I could see this part of the film being cut down a little bit and it working a little bit better,
I that's why I think the theatrical version of this thing, I will say so you get one scene's usually about 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So they added about 8 more scenes into this thing, one being a whole little storyline. I think there's probably about 2 to 3 scenes that I think could have stayed in that first one. So that first one's 2.5, 2 hours, 40 minutes. That's where I'm at with it. Everything else is
there's like a healthy medium.
Yeah, and that's where I'm not. That's why I don't want to discredit some of the stuff I saw. Like that first act, like I was invested the whole time.
Absolutely.
It wasn't until about I kind of noticed there was like there's a couple things that Liam Neeson was doing along the lines trying to aid some of the exposition on what he was kind of going through as a character, and why he would, like one of the things he looks out fondly and he sees himself remembering dancing with that lady, who you can only interpret as Orlando Bloom's mom, Mary Christ. And it's you kind of get the sense of he's coming back because
there's a reason why he's called Godfrey, maybe.
Yeah. Shouldn't it be Joseph or no? That's Guy. No, that's not Guy either. That's whoever Orlando Bloom's stepdad was.
Right. He's the dad that stepped up.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Love it. There's some stuff like that, but then there's another one where they get into the fight scene and they're getting ready to do battle and stuff. I'm like, we're dragging out this horse getting to the woods really too long, and
Sure.
Some of it works, but I do think that there is the theatrical version does a good job of the editing of this to keep the same story and kind of make it a little bit more brisk. So we talked about it. You said that there was a lot of good reviews on the director's cut, more so than with the the theatrical version of it. And I think it is for those that a little bit more of the world building, a little bit more of the storytelling. Right. And I definitely within this one, if you love it and you really like what you're seeing, this would fit in. And I think most times that's probably how it works with director's cuts. Like I'd have to imagine that if you really like the world that you're in, you're willing to take more of it on. Mm-hmm.
And Ridley Scott is not a stranger to director's cuts of his movies. He does it for a lot of them. Napoleon being like the latest example where there's a 4-hour cut on Apple TV. He had a lot of deleted scenes from Prometheus that weren't included that maybe could have added a little bit more to that story.
Interesting.
Blade Runner being like the most famous example probably, right? Of like
I don't know.
Different
and I don't know
versions
what
of the
one
film.
I've seen.
I think I recently listened to the episode where we talk about Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I think we had seen the final cut.
The final cut.
Which is on Netflix.
They bleed both of them together
or at
a little
least
bit?
It was at the time that we watched it. Yeah, it's a combination of the unofficial director's cut, which is they called it the director's cut, but Ridley Scott had no involvement in it.
Yeah.
So really it wasn't a director's cut. It was more of an editor's cut. And then the European theatrical release because that had more violence in it. So a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B.
Which is what this one could have used. I think I'm a final cut guy.
I don't disagree.
I'm a final cut guy.
Yeah.
Give me bleed them both together.
Right.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I think there's probably always both sides of the story that you could probably and that's a good call not having it, and that's a bad call not having it.
Mm-hmm. I always find it fascinating when directors, Ridley Scott, especially, go back and sort of reclaim their film in a way of either like a director's cut or final cut or whatever, including deleted scenes, taking scenes out, because it is sort of the idea of, he's obsessed with like these historical epics, telling stories of like, these things that actually took place, obviously through the creative lens of him as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
But then he's going back to his own films and sort of re-editing, reinterpreting what he himself had already established, whether or not it got like studio hands meddled all over it.
Right.
So it is interesting how like he as a filmmaker is interested in history, albeit sort of the bastardized storytelling version of it, not saying that it's bad or good.
Right.
But also the fact that he himself just can't help but work on his own stuff in a way that's very similar.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense once you think about it, right? Why he goes back and makes so many different versions of his films.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that and I don't know. I feel like sometimes egos play into it.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Now, there's also the thing with this movie, too, and we should probably touch on it a little bit at least, of it being accused of being historically inaccurate. Ridley Scott, a filmmaker that I think we've touched on before, does not give a fuck if his movies are historically accurate or not,
Creative
especially
liberties,
as of
right?
late. Creative liberties, and also just, telling a story is going to be inherently subjective no matter what, no matter how many fucking facts or actual historical
there's got to be a little
things
bit.
you put into it, right? Like, I think if it's a movie, and we've touched on this before, I feel like there's nothing wrong with going at it with the lens of for the sake of filmmaking, right?
It's entertainment.
It's entertainment. If you omit certain things for the sake of making a better story or change some things to make it a little bit more interesting of a narrative, I think that's fine. This movie's not coming at me with the text box that says everything depicted in this film is historically accurate.
Right.
You should take everything for its face value, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I'm going in to see fucking Orlando Bloom stab motherfuckers. Like, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, give me the final battle, goddammit.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with taking something like this and reinterpreting it in your own way.
No, I don't either. I mean, I'm fine with it, and I don't think that. I mean, unless you're doing something to host an agenda, or
Right. Unless you're like actively looking to harm like a specific group of people
or enhance another side. Like I kind of think like Mel Gibson,
right, like
with
a clear bias or something.
Yeah, like that's what that's where I would be like, all right, like or you do it the way that Tarantino did it in one of his films. I'm not going to name it. Brad Pitt's in it. But you obviously make it in a fun, spirited way.
Yeah.
Like he's done that a couple times where he changes revisionist history, if you will. And I'm fine with that as long as it plays out that way.
Right.
And I don't think in this one it's necessarily like he's diving into the facts to make sure that he's giving us a clear and accurate depiction of what it was like during the Crusades.
Right.
It's telling a story of one man trying to cleanse his soul.
And I don't think he himself is going out saying like, oh yeah, you can watch my movie and it'll be like reading a history textbook. It's like, no, it's a fucking movie.
Yeah.
You go to the theater, you pay for your Sour Patch Kids, you sit down, you suck on the strawberry ones because they're the best ones.
Interesting strategy.
And then you just sit back and enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about with this movie? We covered it pretty extensively, I would say. Anything we excluded? I like the music.
Omitted.
Yeah. I talked about some of the action scenes and like the sword fighting.
Yeah.
One thing I'm not like a huge fan of, especially in like Ridley Scott movies like this, is a lot of the quick cutting. A lot of the way that the action scenes are edited in this movie are very hard to just discern.
Yeah.
Right? Not like a knock on the production of it or even like the way that they're shot, but just the way that it's edited together is just very choppy. It's not as egregious as something like
Taken,
right? But it's still there.
Yeah.
Speaking of Liam Neeson.
Yeah. Well, the first one's all right.
First one's solid.
Yeah.
2 and 3 are just
a little bit more on cocaine.
A little bit more in the trash, I would say.
Yeah, as that old proverb
cocaine
says.
Laced with fentanyl. I would describe those movies.
No. DOA.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it might be an artistic choice, and it's just one way to keep the action kind of going and some of that kinetic energy flowing without having to spend too much time on choreography and stunts. And honestly, too, I mean, you're fighting with swords, so I don't know how great of a time you can have trying to get some like very accurate.
Right. Part of it is the limitation of the time that they made this movie.
It would be. Have you ever seen Braveheart?
Yes.
Okay. Like that's a interesting movie to kind of compare it to. Mm-hmm. And I wonder.
Yeah, especially when it comes to like the historical inaccuracy
no, I'm
stuff.
just talking about the battle scenes. Like they're both fighting with swords. Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's any. And I'm guessing you have to spend a lot more time on stunts and extras and choreography and marking and all that, and he might not want to have to deal with quite as much of that. So you're able to keep the pacing going while kind of creating these, like you said, short and choppy edits that make it a little hard to tell where you're at in the battle. Mm-hmm. It almost feels like you're kind of a fly, just zip, 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 going to person as you're
right. And I get part of it too is you want to emulate the idea of, oh, it's a disorienting battle. You want it to be like kind of fast paced and have that sort of style with it.
Yes.
But, you know, there is something to be said about the fact that not a lot of movies do this sort of thing anymore.
No, you lose. You lose a little bit of the sight of the character and the protagonist, and some of those stakes go down a little bit if you're not even able to keep up with what's going on.
Right. Like when I watch a movie like this, my brain just sort of says, oh yeah, action is happening right now. Just sort of have faith that Orlando Bloom's going to get through it and just munch on your candy and you'll be fine.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
If they need to accentuate a moment, they will do
Slow
it
motion.
with like either low frame rate slow-mo moments or just like, oh, all of a sudden, like we're just focused on one character.
Yeah.
Something's either going to happen to him or he's going to do something.
Yeah.
That's noteworthy.
No, so like I said, I turned this on just so I can have peace with saying it. I fell asleep for the last 20 minutes of this thing.
Yeah.
And you know, it kind of was like oh my god, I can always say it when I'm talking to my brother and I can never remember the fucking word. Denouement. Some of the concluding action or information. And I remember in the theatrical, he makes it back to Ibelin, if I remember right.
Yes.
And he sees more of the knights going or the people going on crusades, and it's kind of like a may God be with you. And then you just get that sense of it never ends, you know? Mm-hmm. So I woke up startled with the credits rolling, and I went, shit. And I go, man, how far back was I? And I was like, there was a quick thought of maybe I only missed 10 minutes. It was ending,
right?
You know, and then immediately went into no, it's a director's cut, so I'm sure it will be a little chunky. 25 minutes from the final battle to when the credits start. I had to rewind, and I got through 5, and he starts fighting Guy out in the streets after everything's concluded.
Right.
I'm watching it, and the battle's not great. And Orlando Bloom, I'm like, well, he's Jesus, so he won't lose, and it kind of looks stiff, you know. Both these guys don't need to have swords in their hands, and I don't know why he's here anyways, because the guy Saladin should have killed them. And I just went, I'll be forgiven for missing the last 20 minutes. Kind of remember how the theatrical went in and like that one better anyways, you know. So
sure.
I don't know what I missed in the last 20 minutes there. Hopefully it wasn't anything too crazy.
The most notable thing I can remember is, so he returns to Ibelin.
Yeah.
He kind of like goes up to his old like blacksmith shop, and then 2 guys ride up on a horse, and one of them looks at him and says, "Are you Balian of Ibelin?" And he goes, "I'm just a blacksmith." And the guy goes, "I'm looking for him. I'm the King of England." And they like stare at each other a little bit, and then like he like rides off or whatever.
Okay.
And the implication of that scene being, even though Orlando Bloom told him that he's just a blacksmith, the king could see that he's a little bit more than just what he says.
Yeah, because of that stoic look.
Because of that look and like, you know, that sort of knightly demeanor that Orlando Bloom just naturally lives with.
Camera starts slowly zooming in on his face, and then it shoots back out towards the king, and then it shoots back towards Orlando as they just gaze into each other's eyes.
Yeah.
And then he goes,
"Take My Breath Away" is playing in the background.
Yeah. Must have been mistaken, sir.
That's the most notable thing I can think of.
It is kind of funny, too, to think that, like, Orlando Bloom, all right, like, here you go. Your wife just, you know, if she's dead, you go to Jerusalem. I don't even know if he cleanses his soul. He almost becomes the king of Jerusalem. Witnesses his dad die. Witnesses 2 wars, or a war being waged. Watches the loss of Jerusalem. Goes back home and runs into the King of England. And it's just like, you're going to want to go 20 miles that way to find him. And it's just like, okay.
Oh, he repeats the sort of thing of like, go to where the men speak Italian, and then keep going. That's one until they speak something else.
Can you tell me how to get to how to get to Jerusalem? And he does that same quip. Yeah, but I just find it very funny. He just goes like through all this shit and gets back home, and it's just like
Orlando Bloom's the ultimate Mary Sue character.
Yeah,
like he's just the best.
I'm gonna go back to doing what I did.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure my wife was saved. Also, really glad I had sex with Ava Green. Like,
I mean, hey, I think he won in my book. He won. Hero of the movie, he is Crusader Jesus.
yeah, I like that.
Shall we get into ratings for this movie? Unless there's anything else you want to
No,
bring up.
I have nothing. I go first on this.
I think so.
Be interested. Okay, I'm gonna give theatrically. I have it as an 8. All right.
Okay.
This one, I'd probably. God, it's so hard because the first one I have it as an 8, and then it's almost like that got tainted from this one, and this one taints that one. It's just a taint fest.
That's a really interesting choice of words.
Taint. Yeah, I don't know. You know, can I just give the theatrical one a rating and just say this one never?
If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do.
Okay, yeah, that's what I don't know. This one's like it's in between a 6 and a 7 because it's not like it gets knocked down that much. I watched it late at night. It didn't hold my interest. Once we got to about the second act, there was just a lot. There's so much more fat going on. The exposition was just drawn out, and then it's like new exposition once we get into the second act, which was just more of like just drawn out crap for me. So theatrically I love it. This one's like a whatever. I'll just say that's my rating.
A whatever out of 10.
Yes.
The first ever from McLean Parker.
I hate to say it, but this is it's unprecedented. We've never done this. I have to find a director's cut now of something you've already watched once and see if you like that one more.
I'm not opposed.
Yeah.
But then again, I am a freak. So I enjoy this version of the film. It's the only version of the film I've seen.
Yep.
I enjoy all the extra stuff, all the extra trimmings that have gone on this movie. With the acknowledgement that Orlando Bloom is a little bland. He's a little bit of a Mary Sue boy. Yeah. Everything kind of just works out for him. He's Crusader Jesus.
Boy, howdy.
Boy, howdy indeed. Ava Green getting a little bit more to do in this cut of the film, which I am a fan of, as we've discussed. All the other performances in this are just stellar to me. Yeah. I love the way this film looks. The aesthetic, the whole music behind it really ties the room together, much like the rug from The Big Lebowski.
Nice.
And I'm giving this an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
Very
I'll take
solid. Just really enjoyed what this movie was about. Glad I recommended it.
Yes. Are you glad
you picked it?
I was about to say, because
you
could have picked 2 other ones.
Yeah, much like a knight, you had a hand in this victory.
Much like baby Jesus made the right choice.
Much like Orlando Bloom Jesus.
Yes, Crusader Orlando Bloom Jesus.
Orlando Bloom, do you want to guess how old he is now?
44.
Close. 47.
Yeah.
Married to Katy Perry for about 8 years.
Good for him.
Good for him.
Yeah, there's a reason why he fell out of acting.
You know, he's still a handsome boy. I'd give him a kiss.
That's why they make it into acting. They got the looks. All right, you got to have the chops.
It also doesn't hurt that you're in 2 huge franchises at the same time.
Oh,
Pirates and Lord of the Rings.
I liked what you said about him getting casted for this for the look just because of the name value. I also thought it made a lot of sense because there's a lot of sword fighting in Pirates.
Yes.
So he already had some of that stunt work
right. You
down.
don't need to like train him as much because he already knows a lot about that shit.
Like he's got no personality. Well, god damn it, we don't have to hire a stunt coordinator.
He's
now.
in Troy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Did Troy come out before this? Or did it come out after?
It's like right around the same time. There was like a lot of that medieval, I know society before society.
People compare Troy to Gladiator a lot.
Not great. Not a great call.
2004. So yeah, he already did Troy before this movie.
Yeah.
So he's got like extensive sword boy experience.
Yeah.
Plus he's just a good-looking boy. Holy shit. I'm just scrolling through the Cinema Carousel website just to see what movies are coming out.
Yeah.
There's so many fucking showtimes for Wicked.
Oh, dude.
Are you gonna see that?
No, hell no.
What? You're not gonna? Jasmine's not gonna drag you to see Wicked?
I had to drop off Preston Sunday, and she was like, "Do you mind if I go see Wicked?" And I was like, "No, go. Hey." And I was
she
like,
got to see it without you.
well, no, she didn't. She didn't go because she couldn't get a. She had a couple friends that she was trying to coerce into going with her. Not that they didn't want to see it. They just everyone's busy.
Everyone is fucking busy.
So, and if she someone's got to watch Willow. So,
Right.
no, I've got.
Just leave her there. She'll be fine.
If you can believe it,
Fred's
or
got
not,
an eye on her.
That fucking turtle. He doesn't do. He sits there and stares at me with like a.
Well, he's a turtle. Do you want him to do tricks?
He feels like the fish in Cat in the Hat.
I would love to have the fish from Cat in the Hat.
I would not. That thing was fucking manipulative.
Manipulative.
Yeah.
I don't know if he had any sort of agency in that movie. How manipulative could that fish be?
Well, he was trying to get the cat not to do stuff,
And then the cat would just do stuff anyway.
totally like he was a wet blanket.
Yeah, well, he is a fish, so he's pretty wet already.
Yeah. Well, and you can get into the literal sense. That thing, he was sitting there, and you could tell he had his own agenda about keeping the house clean. Fred seems the same way.
Yeah.
But,
Fred's got those vibes.
Yeah, he's got. I mean, I love Fred. Don't get me wrong.
We all love Fred.
I love that. I love that turtle. But man, like when he peers at you, sometimes you just feel like he's got a plot.
Mm-hmm. Maybe he's a Ninja Turtle, and he's waiting to strike.
Well, hopefully not me. I wouldn't mind if he was a Ninja Turtle and took care of the crime in the streets.
Yeah, you got Donatello, Michelangelo, Leonardo, and Raphael, and Fred.
Yeah.
Yeah. The quintuple, whatever you say.
Oh, yes.
So before we move on to recommendation,
Yes.
I have our segment, Amazing Reviews, Amazon Reviews. So I found some reviews of Kingdom of Heaven on Amazon for, I think it's like the dual DVD set, which includes both the theatrical and director's cut.
Yeah.
So you're getting both of them. I'm going to let you know right now, all these are 1-star reviews because I found them to be the most interesting.
Okay.
And I'm going to read some of these off.
I have to guess if they're talking about the DVD itself or about the movie.
No, just I figured I could share what they wrote, and then we can give our
commentary
thoughts
on it.
on their nice piece of prose that they left for us. So this one is from Black Weasel, Weezle, 1 star. Just a rotten made-for-TV movie. I think I may just dislike Ridley Scott movies. I assume Mr. Scott got the budget to make an epic, but what he ended up with was a thoroughly miscast, boring movie that felt like it went on for an hour too long. The acting was poor, or maybe it was the script, down to the extras who were smiling for the cameras as they pushed siege engines. Don't waste your money on this. Go and watch Gladiator for the 1000th time. You'll be better off.
I disagree, but I could also see where he's coming from if you got the director's cut.
I mean, if you're just solely talking about Orlando Bloom in this movie, maybe. But every other performance in this is so fucking good. I'm sorry, Black Weasel, but you got to take the L on this.
Yeah.
You're not weaseling your way out of this one, I'll tell you that. This one reads, from the user whose name is wouldn't play Western produce items, complete waste of money.
Ooh.
That's his name. They say don't waste, and the review is simply G. Just G.
Nice.
Good.
Don't waste
Good.
G.
Maybe they were trying to type Guy was the best character. But
don't waste your time on Guy.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly didn't waste any spaces on his review. Let me tell you, he got to business, and his business
That
was
a 50-year-old man that got so mad at this film that he thought he'd try to make an attempt to dissuade people from buying it.
Right. Here's what probably happened. He put the 1 star. The thing prompted him, do you want to write a review? And he probably felt that if he didn't put something in the text box that it wouldn't take his rating.
Yeah.
So then he just put G in there and then hit send. So that way he thought it would be sure to go through,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Someone confused with technology that decided to type all that out.
Yeah. This next one comes from Amazon customer. So anonymous, basically. Fabrication Ball Jesus.
Ball Jesus.
Baal Jesus. Now, bear with me as I read this. This is going to be a mess. Adonai, Abba, Father, and Belenahim are truth God, not Christian, false image, lawless, paganism, hateful God against the Hebrew, not saying this word, for last shall be first. Can't watch any more of this.
Oh, okay. So that's like
angry schizophrenic, maybe?
Angry Christian?
Angry Christian, angry
Maybe
Muslim,
not,
angry
yeah.
somebody.
Yeah.
A lot of the words in this are not English words.
They play out both sides well in that thing, too, I feel like. Kind of.
There's a lot of people who would disagree. I look just scrolling through these reviews.
A lot of people.
You would think this was like the most abhorrent piece of art that had ever come out.
Really?
About like any sort of historical thing ever. Yes.
Both sides pissed?
Mostly Christians.
Really?
But that's probably because they have the most access to this website. Living in the Western world. So you get a lot of one perspective, not the other. This next one comes from R-E-E, disappointed female.
Oh.
My pastor at the time loves it, so I had to see what was so good about it. Still wondering. Dark and difficult to see through many scenes. Very bloody and violent. I think that maybe it is a movie that men would like. I didn't care for it. I also found it hard to follow.
Yeah.
Sounds like you went in with a preconceived idea that maybe you weren't going to like this movie, right? Just kind of based on the premise, the genre, sort of like what it is.
Is it really that hard to follow?
I don't think it's that hard to follow.
I mean, you can kind of like...
Maybe the action scenes are kind of hard to follow, but that's it.
I was to say, some of the... I feel like it's all pretty well... And I will say, watching it again, this is one of the gripes I had, too, with the cut. There are so many odd names for us in the English language, right? Mm-hmm. And they keep repeating, and they're going to these different places with these odd names that they just keep throwing at you. And I just became a little bit more confused. Like, obviously, like, you get to a point where it catches up. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not doing a great job keeping... character names separated because they keep saying it, but the character isn't here. And then a couple of them had two different names.
They're talking sort of tangentially about like other characters not in the scene.
Right. Yeah. So that's where I could see a little bit on the confusion side. Yeah. But like in terms of story, it's pretty just straightforward.
Right. It's not like Prime or anything.
Right. That's a great example.
You're proud of me now? I used the right one.
Yeah.
Our next one comes from the official Tom Wilson.
Ooh.
It's the Tom Wilson. We have to be careful.
E or A?
E or A?
The or the?
The. So like THE.
Yeah.
Like the Tom Wilson.
No, but I'm like the Tom Wilson.
The Tom Wilson.
Like they do an A? THA?
No, it's a THE.
That's what I'm... Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
It's an E, not an A.
It's an E. The Tom Wilson.
So maybe it's not the official Tom Wilson.
You might be onto something. Kingdom of Heaven equals anti-Christian message. Sort of what we were talking about earlier. He writes, a grossly politicized manipulation of history. A deliberate effort to distort the truth. If you are a Christian, this movie is a waste of time. Spelled waste, W-A-X-T-E, unless you want to experience an excellent example of a Hollywood attack on the Christian faith.
Is that what it is? I don't know too much. I'm not a religious guy.
So it just kind of shows them being a little tolerant towards other religions. And
oh, is that why it was bad?
I guess.
Two sides living in harmony?
Some people are intolerant of tolerance.
Okay.
Is what I have come to learn. Sounds like this guy doesn't like the way Muslims were portrayed in this movie as being not the bad guys. Sorry, Tom. Maybe this movie's not for you.
Yeah, just about power and greed, huh?
Our last one comes from Tired of the BS.
Oh,
is the username.
This is like
even more official than the Tom Wilson.
Yeah.
Because
Maybe,
they are done with the bullshit.
Maybe this is
They're
Tom Wilson.
over it. Yeah, this
and
is
he
him
uses
like
the
coming
Tom
up.
Wilson as his like moniker.
Right. This is like him unfiltered.
Yeah.
He writes in the header, "Do not order this to view online. You'll get ass raped."
Whoa.
That's strong language. If you're expecting to rent the extended version online without ordering the actual DVD, ... save your money. It's a bait and switch. You get the original, not the extended version, even though that is what's advertised. I will shop elsewhere and dog these maggots every chance I get.
Nice. Here we go. That's a little counterculture for your ass.
Well, he's tired of the BS. What do you expect? He's not gonna go in like with a weak, limp arm. He's gonna charge in like Orlando Bloom with a big old sword.
Yeah,
my
yeah.
boy.
He wants that extended version.
Absolutely, and he's gonna extend his hate
Yes.
towards anybody who tells him otherwise.
We will not tolerate bigotry.
No, absolutely not. Posted on May 20th, 2013, by the way. So. Over a decade ago. I wonder if he's still dogging on those maggots, you know?
I wonder if he got his extended version of this.
Giving him the business. I would hope so. By now, I would hope he found a way.
You never know, man. Maybe it was just Amazon or done, and they didn't have it, and he's like, "Fuck."
Never associated with them again. Yeah. Doesn't use Prime. Doesn't order shit.
I don't want anything to do with them. They didn't have my goddamn director's cut. You're saving yourself, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of saving yourself, Mac, I know you're saving yourself for marriage, and you're also saving yourself for this recommendation.
Yeah, the saving myself might be done. 2 kids.
Well, no, those were miracles from God.
Yeah, that's true. Orlando Bloom's.
Yeah, they're Orlando Bloom's kids. He is Jesus after all.
Yeah. I want to get a shirt that says, what did we say? Night Crusader.
Crusader Jesus?
Crusader Orlando Bloom Jesus. Crusader Knight Orlando Bloom Jesus. Something along those lines.
Like they're the titles, like they're the various monikers that he carries.
No, just one run-on sentence, but it's just in black lettering and like Arial. Or, like Times New Roman.
Times Erosion?
Nah, we could do some Times Erosion. Yeah, anyways. That would be a fun shirt. That like the all-white shirts that just have like that.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love that. That'd be such a great shirt.
We could maybe make it happen.
Oh, we should get it up on Etsy.
Absolutely.
Man, yeah, for 3 people to buy. I might be one of them.
You probably, yeah.
That and what was it, Pussy Posse? I don't know if that one's socially acceptable or not.
I don't know how I feel about advertising a shirt that says Pussy Posse.
Yeah, but I'd want to have it. You got to have it like the Rat Pack, but just, McGuire.
We could have like a picture of like a silhouetted cat and then put the word posse next to it.
No, I'm doing it where it looks like Sinatra with Sammy Davis and all that. It's just DiCaprio, McGuire.
Yeah.
Who else was in that?
Whoever else. They're the only 2 that I like remember.
That's it. I want it like Reservoir Dogs silhouette style. And it just, that'd be such a bad. But you wear that out in public, you'd get fucking stoned to death.
Yeah.
Speaking of medieval times.
You'd be exiled, outside the city of Jerusalem.
I get to make a pick?
You do.
Okay.
You do get to make a pick.
There are so many ways that I want to go with this. I've recently, in lieu of looking today for movies to found that I don't pick movies that well. Like, it's usually like, I like the movies I pick. Don't get me wrong.
I was going to say, what are you talking? Don't discredit yourself.
Takes me so long, and I just never have a game plan of what movie I'm going to pick. So I'm always like, I just like having it off the cuff.
Yeah.
So I do have a movie in line. It's a movie I have not seen. It might be a little bit better towards, maybe this one. So, no, you got the next. No, we're going to do it now because you get the next pick, and we're recording on the 17th, so they'd come out on the 31st. To help out with those goals after Christmas, all right, starring one Matthew Modine, all right, I was going to go from a sports element, and I actually had a couple other movies lined up that I was going to pick, but I'm staying away. I'm going to go with this one because I have not seen it. It might frustrate people that are listening. But I think it could be great. We are going to watch a little movie called Vision Quest.
Never heard of this film. Don't know what this is. Looking it up on Letterboxd right now. 1985.
Yep.
Directed by Harold Becker.
Yep.
Stars Matthew Modine, Linda Fiorentino. Cool. All right. Yeah, this is the one, right?
Of course.
Awesome. Yeah, Vision Quest. Never heard of this movie. Harold Becker. Looking at his filmography, not a ton that I have even heard of.
It's gonna be great.
Mercury Rising, I think I have heard of.
Yeah, that's Bruce Willis with the autistic kid.
Bruce Willis is on the cover, so I'm guessing you're probably right.
Yeah, it's a kid. I think he cracked the code for like the CIA jackpot, and all these guys are hunting for him.
I love movies with magical autism. Malice
In the Palace. Yeah. What
with
happened in 2004?
Yeah, Nicole Kidman, Alec Baldwin. Taps.
Oh, Tom Cruise?
Looks like he's on the cover.
Yeah.
City Hall.
Nope.
Is that Al Pacino? That is Al Pacino.
This guy, well, he's worked with some people.
Yeah, he's got some
Modine's
fucking
still
cred.
around, dude.
Yeah, Modine's still he's
Yeah.
looking good.
Yeah.
He was in that shitty Liam Neeson Retribution movie, but he was
don't talk
handsome in
about
it.
that.
You know what? I just didn't say any words. I said just
A lot of dead
gobbledygook.
air right there.
Yeah, it's just like a solid bleep. Just like edited in. Holy shit. Cool. Vision Quest. And then we'll
Vision
figure
Quest.
out a movie to watch with it, to pair with it.
Pair with it.
Isn't
There's got to be some things.
some things coming out? Well, if we record on the 17th, maybe there's something that comes out next week sometime.
You go to
that-
IMDb and you think that they just have all this ready for you right
Oh, dude, we
there.
got Kraven the Hunter. I'm craving it. We could watch that.
Oh, Craven? Yeah. When's Craven coming out?
That comes out next week on the, I think maybe the 12th or the 13th. So it comes out on the 12th.
Next week?
Yeah.
I honestly, I've been seeing more of these trailers for Craven, and I'm like, all right, this could be fun.
You know, it's from the same makers as like Venom and Madam Web, right? Like it's a Spider-Man thing.
Yeah, I know it's a Spider-Man thing, the creators, but it's not the director. And they got Aaron Taylor Johnson. Yeah, and that guy's got some chops. I don't know if I'm really excited about his Russian accent.
I'm not. I'll tell you right now, I've been memeing on this movie for like the past half a year.
Yeah.
So I'm going in thinking it's not going to be great, but I would talk about
I
it.
bet you it's going to be I bet you anything. It'll be entertaining. It'll be a good popcorn flick that'll probably fit within the zeitgeist somewhere of 10 times better than Venom and 100 times better than Madam Web.
I fucking hope to God. So do we
You
want to?
didn't watch Madam Web's trailer and was like, that's going to be a good movie.
No, I went into it knowing it was going to be a fucking garbage pile, but
Yeah.
I still went in and watched it. I still watched the movie.
Venom and
it
Madam
was fucking
Web,
terrible.
like the trailers look
Holy shit.
god awful.
Yeah.
Like Madam Web was so disorienting. I had no idea what. The Last Mimsy's the last time I think I'd bring it up every fucking time that I've watched a trailer and been confused
Yeah.
as shit about what the movie was about. And every once in a while, Madam Web was there. I still haven't seen it. I probably will never see Madam Web.
At least that thing with Venom, not to like defend Venom too much because it's still bad. At least Tom Hardy's giving like weird energy in those movies, right? Like he's kind
Watched
of,
it with Preston.
yeah, he's kind of being like a manic weirdo in
Yeah.
those films. Madam Web is just like astonishingly brain dead and
Yeah.
boring and just nonsensical.
No
Like,
direction.
It's got
whatsoever.
like absolutely nothing going for it.
Yeah.
It is just like a movie that I would say doesn't exist, but it has notoriety to it. It's got like meme
In a
status of how
bad
bad
way.
it is.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So I can't say it doesn't exist because it's a stain. It's a stain on the shirt of cinema.
Yeah, Craven and Vision Quest.
So we're putting a stamp on Craven.
I think we have. I want to see it. Like
All right.
I think it'll be fun to see in theaters, and I have zero expectations with it besides it being fun. So worst case scenario is it's not fun.
Right.
Best case scenario, it's a decent film.
All right, cool. So if you guys don't want to be spoiled for Vision Quest, directed by Harold Becker and Kraven the Hunter, starring Aaron Taylor Johnson. I'm craving it.
Are there any Rotten Tomato scores on it?
Let me look it up. Because sometimes with movies like these, there's like a little bit of early ratings.
That's what I'm curious about.
There is not. I would guess there is a review embargo, and the fact that they haven't let people watch it yet is not a great sign.
That's not true. It doesn't always have to be that way.
It doesn't always have to be that way.
Or there's enough hype around it where they're like what?
I don't know. It's mostly just within like gaming communities too. But like, if review embargoes are in place on a movie like up until the day that it comes out, that usually means the studio does not have faith that the movie is going to be good.
Okay.
Because they don't want bad reviews to come out. And if there's no bad reviews to come out, then that means that they're trying to at least get people to go see the movie, despite the fact that there's no reviews out, because any bad reviews would stay people away from that, right?
Well, yes, but couldn't you also make the argument that it's going to be a good film, and so you want to keep away, you want to lower expectations, so that way if people are kind of assuming that it's going to be bad with nothing there, they have to at least check it out?
No, I don't think studios think like that.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Yeah, listen, your brain and my brain does not work the same as like fucking Sony's brain, right? Like their brains are just kind of like leaking out of their ears.
Now I'm thinking about like Morbius, but Morbius didn't like. This thing looks like fun and interesting at least.
At the very least. You know, it's rated R. It's got like some fucking
it's rated. I'm
that
sold. We made it. I bet you this thing is above 70% on Rotten Tomatoes after it comes out. Rated R.
You think it's gonna reach that high? You think it's gonna be like 70%?
I don't think they're gonna fuck this thing up. I think Aaron Taylor Johnson's gonna be fun in this. The weird Russian accent's going to play into all the craziness that's happening around it.
Let's bet on this right now.
Okay.
I will bet you it's not going to get above 40%.
40%? Are you nuts? It's rated R.
It's just because it's rated R doesn't mean it's going to be a good movie.
No, but it's going to be better than fucking tampered with. Hey, let's stay away from. Dude,
I'm not disagreeing with you that it'll be better than
their demographic
Madam
is
Web.
now above 17-year-olds. So you're not trying to capture 13-year-old brain dead kids that are watching this thing for a Frank film. Like this has got to be a little bit of a higher understanding, and it can be even think about if it's gratuitous. Heads are coming off, arms are coming off. Like if that stuff's happening, it's gonna be entertaining.
It could be a lot of like fucking dumbass fun, and I'm all for that bullshit.
Yeah,
I'm just saying like the bar is very low for it to
compared to the other
hit
films.
That threshold.
40%. All right,
40%.
So are we doing prices right, or how does this thing work out? Like if it's not above 70, I lose. Or like, should we have, like you said 40, I said 70, we meet halfway at 55? So it's got to be like that's.
So let's say if it gets above a 50, you win. If it gets below a 50, I win.
Deal. All right.
Okay.
What are we betting on? Are we betting a movie on it?
We could do that. I was thinking just like one person has to buy the other person like pizza or some shit. But
I don't want to spend money. I mean, I'm not that. Let's bet a movie on it. Bet a movie.
All right,
on
bet
it.
a movie on it.
Bet a movie on it. We either have to discuss or not discuss, but we bet a movie and like you pick whatever. Now you don't even have to watch it. I just have to watch it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess we can discuss it off mic. I'm just wondering how it'll work, like just with the.
Do a 10-minute installment where if when I win, I will give you a film, and then
when you win,
you will have to talk about it, and then I get to sit here and listen to you talk about it, and I can add in stuff. But we don't have to have like a huge discussion on it.
Sure,
it's like a 5-10 minute,
just kind of like tack it on to whatever we've already got going on.
Yeah, it's a little segment that we got in here. Like we'll be able to piece time in for a 10-minute review from whatever movie you choose, because you can go. Whatever. Jesus Christ. No films above, let's say, 4 hours.
Okay.
Deal?
And no double feature. Like, you can't do two movies.
Yeah. You get one film to pick. It can be as short as you want. Nothing above 4 hours. But if you really want to twist the knife, go ahead. If you want to be nice about it, go ahead.
How much time are we giving the RT score? Because it fluctuates when it first hits, right? Like a movie comes out,
interesting.
it gets like a 90 immediately, and then maybe it goes down, maybe it goes up.
Let's do, well, it's going to fluctuate a little bit, but that first score is going to really sink or Jesus Christ. I'm so nervous now.
You don't have faith?
Let's do it by the next time we record. Next time we record, and then
Deal.
whoever wins on that segment, we review the score. All right, and then we get to pick whoever's got a,
So
whatever.
the next time we record will be the 17th. This movie will come out the 12th, so that'll give us like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So about like 6 days.
Yeah. I think
for
that
it to linger. About a week, yeah.
I think that's going to be fine enough. Like it's
Sure.
Because everyone's going to see and give their reviews like within the first day or two, right? And then you get,
and who knows, maybe like the earlier reviews will still hit. It'll contribute to the RT score. That'll give it even more time to
what are we using? Rotten Tomatoes, right?
We're using Rotten Tomatoes, specifically the critic score.
Yes.
We're not doing audience score.
Oh, yeah. No. That's fine. That's always what I go off. I know you can't trust the fucking audience.
No, I don't fucking trust the audience at all.
Yeah.
I trust a fucking
man, which could help me
juggler.
out, or it could hurt me horribly.
We'll see.
Man,
I guess we'll see. Cool.
You're going off past performances. I'm going off the trailer.
The bet is set.
It is.
All right. So the rules are, to reiterate, if it's above a 50% by the time we record,
yes.
So December 17th,
yes,
you will have won the bet.
Yes.
You get to have me watch a movie.
Yep.
And we talk about it on the podcast for a bit. If it's below a 50% by that time, I get to pick a movie for you to watch, and then we talk about it on the podcast.
Yes.
Cool.
There it is.
Deal.
Bet's been set.
Bet's been set. Let's do it.
Oh, boy.
So if you guys don't want to be spoiled for Kraven the Hunter, which will not get above a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, declaring it right now, or the other movie, Vision Quest.
Was Morbius rated R? That's
No.
PG-13, right?
No, all of them have been PG-13.
That's what I'm saying. You're going off PG-13 ratings. I'm going off R's, and they're definitely...
We'll see.
Dude, it's going to be like a Deadpool. It's going to be like witty and shit. It's going to be funny. You're going to come back and be like, fuck, I would have gave it an 80%.
We will see. We will see. Be sure to check those films out before episode 86. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Neon Crew Podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and be sure to give us some 5-star ratings on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We also have a website, www.neoncrewpodcast.com, where you can find a link to our Etsy page where you can get some merch, deck yourself out for the holidays, get some nice presents for your grandma. She'll appreciate a Times Erosion shirt. Shout out to Gideon for doing our music. Shout out to Lauren for doing the
logo design.
Shout out to Sam. Not sure if he'll have a night call this week, but I guess we'll stay tuned, right?
He's for everyone, Sam's they're in the playoffs right now, and they got a big game coming up. So
he's been a busy boy.
Yeah, he definitely wants to get on though. We kind of staked in a certain trilogy that we'd like to talk about, and he is very excited to talk about that. So yeah, I don't know if we'll get another night call because he's got other commitments going on right now, but I know he's with us in spirit.
Good to know. Announcing right now the night call on an indefinite hiatus. So their return TBD. Yeah, I think that's all I had to say about that to close it out. McLean, what do we say at the end of these long roads to Jerusalem?
WWTHD.
Bye, everyone.